Thank you everyone for being here today. Please join me in welcoming Sarah Kiefer.
I think we're good. Oh. Okay, so just to get an idea of who is here. So if you guys can see the trunk here, who are our organized minimalists? Oh, a couple? Okay, great. Who has a classroom? Our classroom, yeah? Okay, so a couple of you guys have classrooms. That's awesome. Anybody look like this? Do you live in your car? Okay, great. That was me too. Mine was not this big, so I didn't have that in there. But what about Marie Kondo's worst enemy? You guys are my spirit people. This is wonderful. And then what about who bunks up with our custodians? Or who has been put in that position before? Great. Like I feel like we all have, like work into this little corner. Okay. Who didn't respond? You don't see yourself up here at all? No? Okay. All right. A little bit about me. So I'm Sarah Kiefer. I have a background in deaf education. Are we out again? Test. Oh, okay. I feel like it wants to. Now that's like cardinal sin number 1. I talk loud enough, right? How many times do we hear that? Actually, so let's take it back a little bit too. Deaf educators? Okay, you're my people. Blind, low vision? Oh, well, three, okay. Anybody else? Okay, all right, that's helpful. Okay, well, this is just a background about myself, so anybody can't hear, you can move forward. Use your accommodations. So I have a background in deaf education, also a whole bunch of other things that you can see here too. Administration, I'm a huge tech nerd. I love technology when it works, right? I'm also a parent, so I know what it's like to sit on the professional side of the IEP table as well as the parent side, and that's fun. Anybody else a parent sitting on the parent side? Yeah, it's totally different, isn't it? Yeah, so I know that all too well. So I have experience in preschool through 12th grade. Also, I've taught at the university level. I've been adjunct. I've had courses that I've taught at the university level as well. And I have, I think, taught in just about every setting. So I was really big into virtual before COVID hit, and so when COVID hit, I just kind of slid right into it. It really actually wasn't that big of a deal. So I do work, so I'm not here on behalf of the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education, but I am the deaf education coordinator there. It's over in Indiana. We are the state legislated resource for everything deaf and hard of hearing from birth through high school exit. That's the best way to get a hold of me, but if you guys want, I can give you personal contacts as well. All right, so we'll kind of get this started. First of all, the fact that you are here and you're doing what you do, you guys are lifesavers. So you will see I've got some lifesavers sprinkled about. I also like to do this at every training that I do. First of all, it's a play on words, right? Educators are all lifesavers. You guys are all saints. Candy tends to grab people's attention, so whatever you have, like I staple this to anything I put into mailboxes, I give it to people, and they're like, oh yeah, you're the one who gives the candy. Yes, I am. And if that helps you look at whatever I'm presenting to you or whatever paperwork I'm giving to you, then I've won right there. But also, if you don't want people to fall asleep in your trainings, it's really helpful to give them that peppermint to kind of keep them going. Or depending on what we have for lunch, you might want to hold on to one or put it in your bag for later. Okay, so if you don't get anything, and research shows that when you have a doctor's appointment, when you go to a training, you might actually process 40% of what's being told to you. So think about that though from the doctor's realm, right? So if your parents are going to a doctor's appointment or something like that, they're only really processing kind of 40% of what's going on. I'm good right now. I think maybe it was just twisted, so I think we're good. So if you don't get anything other than this, I want you just to celebrate uniqueness. I think celebrating uniqueness in all children, all people, that's what's important. So to kind of get this started, I would like for you guys, anybody, name something unique about yourself. Y'all, I'm looking out in a crowd and not a single one of you looks like anybody else. You're not dressed like anybody else. Name something unique. Yes. You are a redhead, and that is very unique. Awesome. Thank you for your participation. There aren't very many redheads out there, and you are beautiful, so I'm going to give you a red sticker. Anybody else? What's something unique about yourself? Yes. You are an inline speed skater. Who else has that unique quality of an inline speed skater? You are the only one in here? That's amazing. Awesome. That's so cool. There you go. You get a sticker. Yes, back here. You are a coda. We have other codas? Oh, two codas. But that's so cool. But think about, that's such a small population of people who are codas, right? So there's only 2 in this entire room. I don't know how many people are here, but there's only 2 codas. That's very unique. What else?
Sarah, for those who might not know what a coda is, will you please?
Oh, yes. What is a coda?
A child of deaf adult.
That's right. A child of a deaf adult, or 2 deaf adults. That's correct. CODA. And if you're a kid, that would be KODA, right? A kid of a deaf adult? Yes.
I play hockey.
You play hockey. Anybody else play hockey? You are the only one in here who plays hockey. That's awesome. And are you a soda? Were you saying you're a soda?
No, I said,
okay.
What about soda?
What about sodas? Do we have any sodas in the room? A sibling of a deaf adult? No? No sodas in the room. Okay. Anybody else have anything else unique? Yes, in the back.
No paranormal investigator.
A paranormal investigator. So you can tell me what's going on with my mic, maybe, because I think something's possessed here. Love it, love it, love it. Anybody else investigate the paranormal? You're the only one in here. That is very unique. Anybody else want something to share? Yes?
I'm obsessed with gardening.
Obsessed with gardening. Anybody else? I have a black thumb. If you come to my house, if I plant something, it is going to die. So awesome. There you go.
So much.
Anybody? So let's think about all of those things that make us unique, right? Most of you, there wasn't anybody else who had that unique quality. Something's happening. Paranormal, I'm pretty sure, is happening back here. All right, so what is really important is to embrace that uniqueness that every single person has, right? We need to look at this and we need to foster this everywhere we go. So I've got a whole bunch of pictures here, but if you look in the middle, I have just a sampling, and you will see some of this up here. If you come into my classroom, or now my office, you will see this out in my office. And I think you guys got a book today too. That's great. If you want to check out any of my other books, this is just a sampling. But this is really, really important for our kiddos to see themselves. And not just our deaf and hard of hearing kids, but whoever is in that classroom, whoever is in that school, we need to celebrate that uniqueness and make sure we have representation kind of all over the place and talk about how great it is, right? I'm going to get into that just a little bit more here. So one thing, when a kiddo gets braces, they go to the orthodontist and they get braces, what do parents do? They post on social media, oh, so-and-so got braces, or so-and-so got their braces off, right? We're posting about that on social media. When we get glasses, what do we say? Those are so cute. Oh my gosh, your glasses. I really do like your glasses. They are very cute. So we talk about that, right? Why don't we talk about that with hearing aids? Why don't we celebrate that? Why is that? It's shameful. That's an adult issue, not a kid issue. And you see all the colors that are coming about. You're going to see a kiddo pick bright orange glasses when they're 4 years old, and that's so stinking cute, isn't it? Okay, what if they pick bright orange hearing aids at 4 years old? Why is that not stinking cute? Because I surely think it's cute. And if I see anybody out there, I don't care who you are, I will stop and say, OMG. The coolest people I know have cochlear implants, fist bump. I have said this to people in airports. I have said it in line at a grocery store. I have said it, my kids play lacrosse and I see a little kiddo there and I have told that kiddo. And do you know what? Do you know how many parents come up to me and say, nobody has ever done that. Who are you? I'm like, well, it just happens to be my job. But because they need to be celebrated, right? That kiddo went to that doctor's appointment and they got AFOs, right? Or whatever the leg braces are, and they picked out camo, and they were so excited to pick that camouflage color. And not a single person in their environment recognizes their camo leg braces. That's an adult issue. So we need to flip the script. We need to be celebrating that. And what do we do as parents? Oh, don't look, don't look, don't look. No, you do look. You do embrace it. You do talk about it. You do ask questions. And if you talk to parents, I don't know, parents in the room, if you talk to parents, they want you to ask questions. They want you to recognize their kid, right? And not only that, but for some of those parents who aren't really there yet, they're not necessarily accepting it yet, they are like, oh, wow, okay, all right, this is an okay thing, right? And we don't have to be shameful. I think that anytime a kiddo is diagnosed with anything and we come out of that doctor's office, the audiologist, I think that there should be some sort of like celebration, confetti, balloons, Mickey Mouse is coming out of the corner. I don't care, but we need to celebrate it instead of having it kind of be like when you go and put your dog down and we walk out with our heads down. We need to go out to lunch. We need to celebrate that day annually, right? We need to just really celebrate our kiddos. And everybody around the kiddo, okay? My kiddo got hearing aids and had shark stickers put on them. I told his principal, I said, can you please just go up and give him a fist bump and say, those are really cool sharks on your hearing aids, right? Because then when other kids see that, what do they see? Well, the principal thinks that's cool. Well, I think that's cool too. I told the PE teacher, same thing. He got new red ear molds. Please acknowledge this when you see him, at some point this week. And you know what a PE teacher told me? He said, I've never had anybody say this to me. How cool of a mom you are. So the teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing didn't tell him to do that, but that's okay. That's okay, because she didn't sit in my presentation. Anyway, but so everybody, grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, and the more that we can help parents say, have everybody come around your kid, the more we can have that happen, the more the parents will internalize, the family will internalize, the siblings will internalize. It's not something to be shameful of, it's something to be celebrated, right? The fact that we've got an amazing gardener here is something to be celebrated, especially if she were to come to my house, right? The fact that we have all of these different unique people, we're all unique. We don't want to be the same. How boring would life be? So the more we can celebrate that and talk about what makes you and you and you and you and you unique, I think the more that we expand that culture around our kiddos. And not just our students who we see on our caseload, but everybody else. So I would always bring treats, and yes, it's a form of bribery. Of course it is a form of bribery. But they love to come down and see me. And when you brought them all together, it was like a little mini party. And did anybody else in their class get that? Nope. But they went back to their classroom and were like, I got donuts this morning. What'd y'all get? Nothing, right? Yep, that's right. I got donuts. And so it was a great opportunity for them to come together. They could meet each other. They could describe some of their self-advocacy. They could talk about who they were as a person, right? They could connect and have that camaraderie. And sometimes that was the only time that they ever met another person who was just like them, right? If I was serving in a building and they didn't have anybody, hello technology. I used to be able to do field trips a little bit more, and then they kind of put the kibosh on that, so I was not able to do that as much. But with technology now, we could FaceTime, we could Zoom, they could meet other people who were just like them. And I will tell you, the littles who are on fire are sometimes more impactful to the big kids, right? But then the littles also get to see a big kid who's just like them. And how cool is that? So however we can make that happen, I really, really encourage you guys to take this away with you as you go. Also really nice for battery buddies. Who has a size 13? Oh, I do. Not only that, but actually just like 2 weeks ago, there was a kindergartner and his HAT system was not working. His hearing assistive technology, HAT, was not working. And the teacher was kind of fumbling through it. There was a 5th grader in the building. That teacher knew that there was a 5th grader because we make this known. It's not completely hush-hush. And so they contacted the 5th grader. The 5th grader came over and she helped to troubleshoot for that kindergartner. How wonderful is that too, right? But if they didn't know each other existed and those teachers weren't aware that that even was something that was in their building, then they wouldn't have been able to have that quick troubleshooting that occurred as opposed to waiting for the teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing to come or the educational audiologist to come, because we know we cover many, many buildings. I also think it's super great to have lunch. I will make goals and then I'll tell them, okay, if you can do this and this and this and this, I will bring you McDonald's, of course. Check with the parents, make sure that that's okay, right? But we all got to eat too. And I like McDonald's-ish. I get kind of sick of it. But I will eat along with those kids. And then it's a party that nobody else is getting. Their gen ed peers are not getting this necessarily, right? So then it got to be like when I created this culture, all of the students wanted to come out with me. And the great thing is that I could take friends with me. So their typical peers were coming out they were practicing with them in a safe environment and then coming back out, right? So we educate their peers at the same time too. Social events, I love social events. And I don't know how many of you guys do this, but it's like whatever I was going to do with my family, I would invite everybody. And I would tell local or neighboring teachers that I was doing something and said, hey, if your friends want to come, or your students want to come, they are more than welcome to come. So if I was taking my family bowling, so again, not a whole lot of planning on my part, let's go bowling. And anybody want to come, you can come. If not, I'm going to be there. So you guys come. If we're going to laser tag, come on, we're gonna go at 6 p.m. on a Friday night. Let's go if anybody wants to come. And it grew and grew and grew, and it's so fun. I had some students that were going to different high schools in 2 different districts. They became fast friends and decided to room together in college because they're like, well, we're both deaf. Like, I don't want to just go potluck and get some random person that I have to explain everything to, and that was just going to be a headache for me. So we both get to go, and they ended up rooming together, and the one was just in the other one's wedding, and it was really cool to see. So, the more, again, but had we not had these social events, they probably would have never met each other, So again, celebrating that, but then bringing them together so that they can see each other. I'm really big on celebrating birthdays too. And so I usually say, what's your favorite gas station treat? I know it's not the most healthy, but is it Gatorade? Is it gum? Whatever. And I make a note of that at the beginning of the year. And then when it's their birthday, we celebrate their birthday. Nobody else gets that in the school. So I figure, why not have my kid come back with something that nobody else has? And on birthdays, so if you've got a birthday that lands in the middle of, summer or winter break, I always say, pick a date that you want to be your unbirthday, or we can celebrate your half birthday, whatever it is. I don't care, but we're going to celebrate you even though you're not here. Another thing, and you will kind of see this right here, is my prize box. So my students who saw me on a daily basis, I'm the prize. So they just get to see me. But we did still celebrate, and we would meet goals and do things that way. But my kiddos who were those monthly consultation kiddos that we would call down, I have a prize box full of stuff. I don't recommend chocolate because it will melt in your car. But I have a prize box full of things, pencils, little fidgets and things like that, that they can come and they can get when they see me and we talk, and they are working towards something too, and they know that that prize box is there. Okay, we will get a prize box as soon as we do this, this, and this, and then you can pick a prize and then you can go back to class. So other students see that. They come back with a fidget, nobody else has that, right? And they're like, oh, it's not such a negative thing to get called out and work on something. And then if their peer came too, they got a prize as well. And so then everybody was like, ooh, 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 can I go too, right? So again, not having that, ugh, I don't want to go. I don't want to get called out of class. How can we make it more positive for them? I'm actually going to bump into universal design in a minute here. So I'm actually going to cover all those topics here in a minute. So it all starts with us creating this culture of universal design. I always add this in there here whenever I talk about UDL. I was actually at a presentation here in Illinois at ITDHH, and I said UDL, and this was a few years ago, and somebody said, hooty hoo, is that an Indiana thing? And I was like, oh no, it most definitely is not. But I always have to put that in there because it makes me laugh. Universal design is a universal thing, but it didn't start in education. I know some of you are probably peeking at my slides, but do you guys know where it started? It's not. Universal design actually came from architecture, which makes sense, right? So making things more accessible for the masses, and that's where it came from. Different adaptations, and many of these things are kind of expected now. I don't know why it's not expected for kiddos who are deaf and hard of hearing, or individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, or individuals who are blind, low vision, right? Like I don't understand why that's not the norm yet. It should be, but we'll get there. So here's a perfect example of UDL, or universal design, anyways, not the L part, that you'll see. So ramps and curb cuts. Look at all of these people that helps to benefit, right? You're wheeling around it with your suitcase, right? You don't want to be taking it up a whole bunch of stairs. You're riding a bike, you've got something heavy. It sure is a lot easier to carry that heavy thing when you have a ramp as opposed to, having to go up the stairs. You're pushing a stroller, you're in crutches. Maybe, you're a little bit older, had a knee replacement or something, right? It helps out the masses. And then, we're scooting along on our scooter. I suppose it helps him too, so that he's not actually jumping all of those curbs and things like that. So it's not just in education, it's everywhere we go. But it's interesting because when we go into our schools, this is what we see. We see these negative Nancys who are like, ugh, I've got to do this because special education. I've got a student who has an IEP. They will also say, that seems like a crutch. I see some head nods. Y'all are, but we've got these teachers who are doing the same thing every year, and they don't want to stray from that, so you are really messing up their vibe, right? Because this is what I do. Other students won't like it. Well, how do you know, right? Oh my goodness, if I hear this with closed captioning one more time, the other students won't like it. Nope, that's an adult issue. Kids will learn. If it's helpful and beneficial, they'll pay attention to it, and if it's not, they ignore it. It's not a big deal. And this is making more work. So if we can take off some of that burden, that's always helpful, right? If we can assist with some of that. But I would say, here are my answers. Let's flip the script. Do you use a calculator? because I know if somebody gives me big numbers, can I do it? Yes, I can. But do I grab for my phone and do it on my phone? Or do I say, hey Siri, can you tell me? And yes, like we do this, right? That's universal design. We're using those accommodations. And not only this, is it a crutch? Not really. And what I feel like, it's enhancing learning and our access, and give it to everybody. Everybody gets to use this. Everybody, yes, now I know standardized testing, you can't have all this stuff, but how many of you guys have students who use AAC devices? Yeah? And how many other students in their class use an AAC device? Do you have kids who reject using it? Nobody else is communicating that way. Not always, right? But they don't get to see it. So if they're not seeing it, that's another version of code switching now, isn't it? So we see code switching too. You have a deaf child who primarily uses ASL, right? They're in the classroom and everybody else is talking around them. They don't get to see somebody else using ASL. So then we come to these IEP meetings and they're like, yeah, but they seem to not want to express themselves using ASL. They're talking because everybody else around them is talking, right? So how can we incorporate ASL a little bit more so more people are using ASL? How many can we incorporate AAC and let our other peers, our typical peers, use that AAC device and make that the norm? How many can we do that and make it just more inclusive in that way? Honestly, I feel like other students tend to love this stuff because a lot of these UDL principles help everybody. And sometimes we have a little bit more on the front end. We've got to do a little bit more work on the front end. But then when you have that next student, it's already done. And then when you have that other student, if we kind of change our mindset a little bit, then we're already in that mode of, oh yeah, we can tweak things and differentiate things for everybody, and everybody can use them. It just doesn't have to have a student with an IEP. I had one teacher, that gen ed teacher, social studies teacher, that I was working with, and he was like, you know what, I just decided to look at all the IEPs and all the accommodations that were in the IEPs and just make sure that everything that I did was accommodating for all of that, for everybody. Kudos to you, dude. I mean, that was awesome. And here's the thing. Here's one thing. You do the same thing every year. Little story about myself. My sister was 4 years older than me in school, and I copied her. I just turned in her notebook that had the vocabulary word. Yeah, I know, I'm a teacher, right? Worst teacher ever now. But like, I was like, why do I have to flip to the back of the book, define this vocabulary word, and turn it in? That was just kind of a waste of my time when she had already done it. So I turned in that notebook and and he graded it just the same, okay? So like maybe you should change things up a little bit because kids are smart, and that's called collaborative learning and working smarter and not harder. So our classrooms, our educational environment by design is restrictive for students who have any sort of disability or any accommodation needs. Specifically, I'm going to talk about those who are deaf and hard of hearing or those who are blind low vision. But it is designed for kids who can speak, they can listen, and they can see. That's just, I mean, right now, this is designed for people who can speak and listen and see, right? We don't have all, well, I guess we are a little bit more accommodating in this venue, but again, the way that this whole room is set up, it's not set up necessarily in a UDL kind of environment. If our children don't have opportunities to fully engage, they're at greater risk of failure, right? And so we have to make sure that we're matching their strengths and needs in the classrooms. And like I said before, our school environments are restrictive. So here's a tip, of course. Classroom layout is one. our seating arrangements, and actually like when we are stacked one in front of another, that creates a barrier. Not only that, but it makes it a little bit easier for things to be going on behind, right? Because we can hide behind our peer in front of us. Y'all in the back are the class clowns typically, and that's because you don't get my now I'm wearing a mic system, but you don't get my strong signal in the back because there's all of these bodies in front of you. And so what are you gonna do as kids? You're gonna self-stimulate, do little things, other things that are going on. Now, if it becomes a problem, I'm going to move you up to the front. Why do teachers move people up to the front? Because they're a problem in the back. And if you look at research, that's because they are getting that weakened auditory signal back there. If we put things in more of a U shape or semicircle, it promotes that eye contact with every single person. The teacher can be the same distance from everybody. I know this is not always possible, but that is so great when you have that same distance and there's nobody in front of you. Your voice isn't muffled, as it's going to reach everybody in the back. Teachers have better classroom management. So that's a selling point. When you can see everybody's eyes and you can see what they're doing, you automatically have better classroom management. That in and of itself should make us want to arrange our classrooms like this. It encourages participation. Everybody's able to see each other and has a sense of equality. Nobody's sitting in the front. The bad kids aren't sitting in the front and the better kids are sitting in the back, right? That creates kind of that social system. And it also creates a natural stage for people to come up and share and tell their stories or do whatever assignment that they need to do. Classroom audio distribution, you guys already probably know all about this, but I love this quote here too, that when the teacher's voice is heard, students learn. When students can hear clearly, they are more likely to participate in classroom discussion, to think critically about a topic, and to gain comprehension. So why would these not be in every single classroom, right? It also is, I can walk all around this room and you can hear the signal the same, as long as my mic works, right? Helps to also develop phonemic awareness. I have less of a vocal strain and fewer illnesses on the teacher's part because I'm not shouting above kids all the time. You don't have to repeat yourself. You get a clear, oh, you're supposed to be doing this assignment. This is what you're supposed to do. And everybody, no matter where you're at, gets that same signal. So I don't have to repeat myself as much. It actually improves student behavior. Students are more engaged, less disruptive. And it also really, really helps students with dyslexia and auditory processing, and especially as you're sounding things out when we're talking about phonics. This is another one too. I feel like school announcements, so many of our kids miss the announcements. Now, sometimes they can be posted someplace, and I strongly encourage that. By the way, does anybody know what movie this is from? Oh, Grease, that's right. I love that lady. She's a hoot. Anyways, but it really helps because, first of all, those PA systems that come over and tell our announcements, sometimes, like, I can't, and you're like, what, bus, what is late? I have no idea. You can't hear that, right? It's not a very clear signal. It benefits everybody, students, staff, everything, or everybody in the building. You can share it on multiple platforms. You can make it so that it's accessible for all of your students. It creates a digital record. And how many of you guys have the student media where they have like a video production and they're doing the news that way, right? And are they using captions? No, that's a real life skill. So if you are going to be in the news, they have to include captions, right? So I always go to whoever is kind of over that media production, and I'll tell them and I'll say, hey, you need to incorporate captions. If the speakers have a script, then it's so easy to include captions into that. We can just easily put that in there so that everybody has access, right? So again, it just makes sense, and everybody has access that way. I love this too. A random student generator. We don't think about this that often, right? We're like, why would we want to do that? But a lot of research says that sometimes the way that teachers automatically pair, there's some bias there. We don't, as teachers, we don't mean to do that, but it does happen and it does come out. So it kind of removes that. And then you can also have just different engagement when you are randomly selecting somebody. This is also really great because not everybody is going to have the right answers. We've got kids who raise their hand all the time, right? A little smarty pants that raises their hand all the time. And so we call on them and we call on them and then we call on them. And the time that they don't raise their hand, they might not have that answer, right? But we're not going to call on them. We're going to call randomly on somebody else. But I think what's so great is if you just randomly say, okay, Johnny, you go. And sometimes Johnny knows and sometimes they don't know, but that's okay, and we accept that wrong answer. So then our kiddos become more comfortable having right and wrong answers and needing additional prompts, so we're not always calling on those kids who we know have the right answer. When we are working with partners or in a group setting, if we can randomly select those, it really helps with inclusivity. I mean, I don't know how many times, like you'll say, okay, partner up, and there's like this trio, like the Three Musketeers going around, and they're always together. One of them always gets left out. And just think about what that does to that social dynamic and their relationship, right, when they're left out. So if everybody says, oh, I'm just going to pick, and Susie and Timmy, you guys work together on this one, there you go. They have to work together. So it's random. And it really can help the new kid, right, who's not a part of that group. It can help, again, like I said, that third wheel of the Three Musketeers, right, or the only blank person in the class. I mean, just fill in the blank there. Who the kiddo who might be a little bit more socially awkward and doesn't have a ton of friends in that class, or a kid who doesn't have any friends in that class. All of his friends are in a different class, and so you can kind of fill in the blank. But it offers these wonderful opportunities for kids to learn about each other and find commonalities with each other. And also helps perhaps to repair broken relationships. So maybe, there's a reason why Sally and, Cindy don't want to be, grouped together anymore. But we're going to make that happen. If it happens, randomly, we're going to make that happen, and they're going to have to learn to work together. And the one thing that I love the most is that we can really help to have other people understand how people are different and how we have to work. Anybody work with somebody who you don't really care to work with? I mean, raise it up, y'all. Okay, so we all have to work with people. I mean, this is like a real world application, right? We always have to work with people who might not always be our favorite, but we have to learn to do that. When we have randomness, this allows for that to happen when they're younger to help learn these skills. But when they're older, right, they can choose, they can have some boundaries, but at least they've experienced what that's like when they were younger, okay? As opposed to, I always get to work with my bestie and everything is roses, okay? It's not always the case in life. And so we are kind of setting them up for failure if we allow that to continue to happen and leaving a lot of kids out. If you click on that, it'll take you to an example of a random student generator, but there's so many apps out there that we can use. Another thing, UDL, is our student accountability system. Y'all, you don't have to do this. Make the students do your job for you. Make them do your job for you. So everybody has a buddy, and again, we can randomize that, right? And we check at the end of the day. Do you have your assignments done? Did you write it down in your assignment notebook? In the morning, did you turn your assignment in? Go to your buddy and see, did they turn their assignments in? Check, yes, yes, no, no, and they check it there. So it's not the teacher saying, don't forget to turn your homework in, don't forget to turn your homework in. They're checking with each other. Do you have all of your materials to take home? Did you forget your lunchbox? I mean, so just to back up, I have one kid who's hard of hearing. I have another who's hard of listening, and he is my sweet ADHD boy. But do you know how many lunchboxes we have to have in my house because we leave them at school? Do you know how many coats we have? I'm hoping that he wore his this morning. I don't know. But again, these are the things that you can check to make sure. We can have a visual checklist. We can have, our buddies checking off to make sure. So not only does that help our kiddos who have IEPs, but then also these students are working with each other, and the more that we can include that, the better, right? So we don't have to have the teacher always going over there and helping the child who is blind to make sure that they have all of their materials. Oh no, we've got this buddy next to him saying, oh, did you remember your lunchbox? Did you put it in your backpack? Did you remember your lunchbox and put that in your backpack? Again, make these kids work for you. Making sure that everybody's items are in order, right? We've got some messy kids out there who kind of just shove, but they can check and say, oh yeah, that looks good, or or check that the job is done if they were supposed to be doing something in class. And also, they can repeat social expectations to each other. Because the more they are saying it and it's coming out of their mouths, the more they will remember that going forward, okay? So I feel like if you can have them say, this is a social expectation. Oh, everybody remind your partner what's number one, or what's number two, hands and feet to ourselves. Like you tell your partner this, so that way when you're walking down the hallway, they've already rehearsed this, and so it sticks a little bit longer, it'll stick. This is a big one I love too, but let's talk about like curricular type things, and we're actually going to get into this a little bit more. The way that we do spelling tests, and not everybody does this the same way anymore, but you guys know, and I don't know how it is in Illinois, I know in Indiana, there is no auditory spelling test that is part of our state standardized assessment. What it typically does is it'll say find the correct spelling or find the incorrect spelling. So I'm not sure why we're doing these spelling tests where we say spell read. Okay, R-E-E-D, R-E-A-D, what is that? And I actually have two examples here. These are real life examples. Go down to the cellar for a can of paint. Okay, if a child has never had, basement, cellar, do we even talk about cellars in day-to-day language? No, we don't, right? Not typically. Some kids might know what that is, but for the most part, they may not. If we've only ever lived in an apartment, we don't know what is a cellar, right? That's not something that we talk about. But a seller is somebody who sells paint. That makes sense. We're going to go to the seller person, the salesperson, the seller to get that paint. And so even though phonemically, this is actually spelled correctly, right? But we got it wrong because we don't have that background knowledge to know what a seller is. And I will tell you, this example here is actually me. In 5th grade, we were supposed to spell the word rune. And I was like, that was not on my spelling list. Rune? What is rune? I don't know what rune is. I have no idea what rune is.
This is your interpreter.
R-O-O-N. R-O-O-N. Well, I thought I spelled it R-O-O-N on my spelling test. Rune. Anybody have an idea? I bet you say it. Ruin. In my life, I knew, and I was like, I know the word, but I couldn't in my head remember what word haven't we used on the spelling test, and I got it wrong, and I still remember it enough to put it in a presentation, right? Because in my life, we say ruin, right? Whether that's right or wrong, I'm from the Midwest too, but we use ruin. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. So again, it's all up to that kind of interpretation of the listener and the speaker, right, of how you say things. So again, there's a lot of different things that we can do as far as spelling test alternatives and making sure that this is inclusive for everybody. I actually love, if we're gonna do dictation, to kind of like using the blanks for as long as the word is, so we know that that's kind of the expectation there. And there's a lot of different things there that we can use. But I also have a note here. Just because a child can memorize words for a test does not mean that they understand the logic or the reasoning behind those spelling words, right? So really, what good is it doing us? I don't know. But that's a discussion for another time. Closed captioning. Y'all, I present on this nationally. I won't get on my soapbox, I promise. But the benefits of having words on the screen helps everybody. Do you know that the first thing that if you come to this country as an adult and you go into like an English learner or English, I don't know what you guys call it here, English as a second language class, the adult learning classes, do you know what the first thing they'll tell you to do is? Go home and put the captions on your TV. Watch programming in English and put those captions on your TV, because you will be able to pick out, oh, this thing that I hear, it's this, and those two things go together. Do you know the best places to watch captions, the most accurate, but then also the repetitiveness of those same words and the exposure it's children's programming. Let's think about Sesame Street, and we're talking about, this is the topic of the day. We're talking about green, green, green. So you see things that are green, all these things that are green, and this word keeps popping up. I might not be reading yet, but this word keeps popping up on the screen. Green, green, green. Do you know that kind of multi-sensory approach to learning is going to sink in naturally? We actually don't have to teach reading as much when they're exposed to print all the time. So I don't know why any teacher would not want to do that, but they say that it's going to distract everybody. Nope, that's a you thing. It's not. Like you will learn to ignore it, or you will learn to embrace it if it's something that is helpful. There was actually just a study done in the UK, and they're talking about the age group that uses captions the most, and this is just the general population. And I think the age group was like our late teens, 20s to like early 40s group. I'll have to go and look at it. It just came out this week. But because these are the consumers, because we're on social media. When you're sitting next to somebody, we don't necessarily want them to always know what we're watching on TikTok, you know what I'm saying? And so it's so much helpful to have those captions on so that nobody else knows what we're listening to, or it might not be appropriate. Anybody scrolling through socials right now? You wouldn't dare tell me, would you? But I bet if you are scrolling through socials, you got your captioning on so you can see what they're saying, right? So that you don't have your volume up, so it's not a distraction. But think about captions create that rich learning environment. We're able to hear and see and experience the meaning of this. So this multisensory approach is so, so, so valuable. We also see like those high frequency words that are very difficult to teach. We see them repeatedly. And I don't know why we would ever not want to expose our kids to print. Just the more exposure, the better that their educational environment's going to be. And I don't know if you know this, but you will actually have 80% higher retention rate if captions are used. Hey, teacher, do you want your kids to remember this? If you want them to remember what we're talking about today, you might want to stick those captions on. Also, in those noisy, visually distracting environments, right? Maybe we have a peer next to us who is being a little bit noisier. We're looking over here. We missed what was going on. And so because we missed that, we can look up and we can catch up on that with the captions. But of course, please don't show anything that has craptions. That's a big pet peeve of mine as well. But having those conversations with your media centers or whoever is in charge of purchasing materials, it just makes sense to purchase materials that are accessible for our students. Because I don't know if you guys know, Netflix came under fire, and it's been a few years, but they came under fire because not all of their materials were accessible. And now actually they're kind of the leader of the pack. Let's not wait until we have a lawsuit to get things right, okay? So it's better if we can just start incorporating all of this now. And if it doesn't have captions or the caption functionality to be toggled on and accurate, Most of that media is older. So is it still relevant? Do we need to change it up again? Is it engaging for students? Maybe. And if it's something that you've got to have and you have to have this piece of material that's from the 1970s and it's in black and white and it was originally on a film strip and you've just got to have it, then let's talk about how we can get that captioned for everybody. Or maybe you should just change it up and make it more engaging. This is another one because teachers want you to pay attention to their movies that they're showing on the screen, right? So what do? They give you a quiz that you're supposed to follow along with. This is something that is very difficult for many kids, or you miss that one thing and then what'd you get for number 5? Did you get that? Okay, you got that. Okay, and then you write it down. So are they really paying attention to it? No, right? So let's talk about watch it. Have captions available, then have an alternative after the fact. Have them, or we could completely get rid of this altogether and have students demonstrate knowledge about something. They could be more engaging. And of course, if you have your classroom set up in that U-shaped environment, right, you have that stage ready to go, and you have these kiddos who are performing for each other about the topic that they learned about. They can also help to create something to help memorize those facts, to then share out with other people. You can give a quiz after they're viewing, after they have finished viewing it. But I really feel like, what's the purpose of the video? Is it to teach? Because we're also the football coach and we're back there, watching. I don't know. I might have seen this play out in my life many times, but the football coach is back there reviewing footage from the last night's game, and he puts on a video and gives everybody a quiz, because this is what we do. Have y'all, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? So let's talk about that. Is the video to teach or to supplement learning? And if it's to supplement, then let's just show it and let's talk about it. You don't have captions, that's fine. I'm going to show you. This is a picture of the Grand Canyon. Ba-ba! And I'm going to tell you all about it as we go, instead of making you watch this kind of long, boring video. Now, videos have their place, but again, just making sure that they're accessible. Speech to text, of course, is a huge one. Let's allow everybody to have speech to text, or text to speech for that matter. I've got resources for both. But this really helps everybody. So if we can just make this the norm, please. Again, these are just tips that you can share with your teachers as you're going along. They might help your one student, but they're going to help the masses as well. Kiddos who have learning and thinking differences and have dyslexia or dysgraphia, it's going to really help them. Maybe you have motor issues. We can also talk about using different types of keyboards that will be helpful. And how many times do you have a storyteller of a kid who tells you all of these great stories? And then it's like, okay, great, let's write it down. And they say, I like dogs. Well, that's not what you told me this morning when you came in and you adopted your dog and you named him Henry and da-da-da. Like, where did that go? We lost that. Where'd that go? Because it takes a lot of effort to get that all out. So if you can dictate to something, right, or to someone, they can write it down. You can even copy it into your own words. But those are your unique thoughts that we can then get out there. So there's just lots of benefits for that as well. Flexible seating. Do you guys know how much research has been done on flexible seating and allowing a flexible seating? Do you guys absolutely love sitting right now all day long without getting up? And by the way, feel free to get up, to stand. I know they do look like they're a little cushy, the seats, but if you got to wiggle or whatever, by all means, get up, stand, move around, do whatever you've got to do. If you want to sit on the floor, you're more than welcome to do that. But there's a lot of great research even about flexible seating and all of the benefits that we have just from allowing that to happen. Our kiddos are busy. They've got a lot of things going on in their little bodies, right? And to have them sit for an entire school day, pay attention, and not get those wiggles out, ooh, the more we can allow that to happen, the more focused that they are going to be, and it will help them to be able to understand what they need to do to regulate their body so that they can attend the best. Also helps them to know kind of what I might need to do in other environments too. Let's see. I also want to take away on, these are I have a lot of tips for flexible seating. But the biggest thing that I just want to share here is that student performance increases by 15% by doing nothing other than allowing kids to have flexible seating. Sitting on a ball, sitting in a beanbag chair, standing up at a desk, sitting with a wiggle seat, that alone increases their performance by 15%. What teacher wouldn't want that to happen? I will tell you, so my kiddo who has ADHD, he will tell me that second grade was his favorite year because everybody was allowed to either have a wiggle seat or sit on one of those exercise balls. He doesn't know that was the connection. Like, he was like, I don't know, I just loved that class. The only thing different, I mean, that was an amazing teacher, but he doesn't realize that. I mean, I've told him, I'm like, I think that sitting on that exercise ball all day long was really helpful for you, buddy. But he's in 8th grade now, and so he can even tell you that second grade was the best for me. Like, I loved that year. Perhaps it had something to do with flexible seating. Okay, so where are we at on time? Okay, we're good. We're good. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit about, flipping that, going from UDL, and how can we set the stage and the environment, and how can we as adults set things up to make sure that our students have what they need in general. How can we embrace all of these accommodations and just naturally incorporate them? And I hope that you guys can take away and be able to share with other gen ed teachers, why these things are important, and all the benefits from just creating that environment. So we're going to talk a little bit about self-advocacy skill development with our kiddos. So when the environment isn't set up perfectly, or if it is, to be able to know more about themselves. So it's really important to empower our kids and prepare them for the future, but at a very young age. We have to start at a very young age. And so many times they're like, they're not old enough for that. Oh, yes, they are. We can give it to them in bite-sized pieces when it's developmentally appropriate, but most definitely we are going to do that. 21st century learners as a whole, the goal for this is to engage and empower students in their own learning processes. This is where we're at right now. Like, this is what we're trying to incorporate just in general. Fostering that creativity, communication, collaboration. And we want to encourage content mastery while producing, synthesizing, and evaluating information. We should be moving away from just rote memorization and just getting it in and spitting it back out. So the goal is to make sure that they can retain, that they can do something with it, they can activate prior knowledge, they can connect it to future topics that you're going to talk about. And then also the goal for 21st century learners is to enhance digital literacy and then their civic responsibility. So in my Barbie dream world, that's where I like to live sometimes, is that all students receive self-advocacy training early and consistently. That they understand self-determination and they get that training early. And we'll talk about the differences between the two. That all students are involved in their special education process as early as deemed appropriate. I just say, let's engage them regardless of age. This not only goes for like at school, but as a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, I encourage the audiologists. These kiddos need to be involved in this process. This is their body, right? We need to be having conversations with them about how this is helpful. What do you like about it? What you don't like about it? What could make it better? What could make you want to use these hearing aids? What makes you not want to use these hearing aids? Let's have these conversations and not just do it to a kid, right? It's all about consent now too, but having these conversations, involving them in the process as early as possible. And that students are connected to other students and adults who are just like them. And I am huge on developing in-services and IEPs and having my kiddos be involved in that process as young as possible, and then be able to share and learn with each other as they're going. So here's the difference here between self-advocacy and self-determination. I don't know if you guys know, maybe you do know. But self-advocacy, so speaking and acting on behalf of oneself, understanding their access needs, knowing their rights, negotiating, being assertive and being proactive. That's all of that self-advocacy piece. Self-determination is being able to then know all of this and make choices, making decisions, problem solving for themselves, setting and attaining their goals, and then being able to advocate, and then be able to independently perform. So they kind of go hand in hand, but they have to know about their identity. They have to know about themselves. They have to know what helps them, what is not so helpful for them, and then they have to be able to speak about that and make decisions going forward. So I have this. I think we're going to hold on this, but anybody who wants to get a jump on it, you can go to this QR code. And because many of you have computers, this is kind of going to be like more of a active piece. So I will kind of explain, and then we've got a couple minutes, and so then we will break for your break, and then we'll come back to this. So if you guys want to grab that, and we'll do that when you guys come back. It's a Jamboard. You guys familiar with using Jamboard? Yes? No? Cool. Feel free to grab it. I'll put it up here. I'm going to show you real quick what this looks like. Here is, oh, I might not have internet. Oh, yep, I do. Okay. So what would be great, so when we use the scribbler, it does not work the best in Jamboard. So if you could use either the sticky note or the text box, and we'll do this when we come back. I'm just going to give you a little preview. And then let's talk about what are those advocacy areas? What are those things? What are those skills that we need to teach within these different domains? And I want you to really dig deep. Like, yes, we say preferential seating. I like to use the term strategic seating instead of just preferential. I don't know why, but anyway, I think it just encompasses a little bit more. But let's dig in deep to what those advocacy areas are and what are some potential things that we need to make sure that we teach our students. So you guys can have your break, and then if you feel like getting started on this, you're more than welcome to come back and take a look and put some things, I want to see like some unique things that you're like, we have to take this into consideration. We've got to take this into consideration, because what you guys are seeing and experiencing with your students is going to be different sometimes than somebody else, but that might be something that they've never considered before. All right, we'll pause there. I'll put up the QR code again, and then you guys can have your break. And I think we're coming back at 11, right? 11 o'clock? All right. As we are trickling back, because I know we're still taking care of our needs, again, like I said, if you need to stand, if you need to do whatever, feel free. Did everybody grab this, the Jamboard? Hopefully, yes. All right. I can actually also give you a yell key if you need to, and we can send you over there as well. I should have done that. All right, so I would love, look through these. We've got accessing the educational environment. What are some of those things that we need to have for whatever students you have? So it could be deaf and hard of hearing, blind, low vision. We could have other kiddos with other needs. We could have some of our kiddos who have multiple needs. What are some things that you know that we need to ensure that we incorporate as far as that advocacy instruction and those things that we're doing for accessing the educational environment. I've got a couple of slides here, so if you're like, my juices aren't flowing yet, that's all right. What about for accessing the home environment and the community? I've got some ideas of my own, but I would love some of your participation as well. Do you guys want a yell key for this?
What is that?
Let me throw over. So anybody who doesn't have it, here's a little tech hack for you. You can go to yellkey.com, and I talked about that in the beginning. We'll make this for 24 hours. Ooh, we definitely don't want her to pop up. All right, www.yellkey.com/his will take you to this here. HIS, yellkey.com/HIS, his, and it'll take you here. So if you didn't grab the QR code, that'll take you there. Again, it'll only take you there for 24 hours. Don't go to this later because it won't be there. Awesome. Family training. I love how you guys are sticking some things in here. So accommodations. What are some of those accommodations? We know the general ones. What are the accommodations like? Let's use our collective brain power to talk about what are those things that we need to teach our kids about accommodations so that they can be good self-advocates for themselves. Medical information. What do we need to teach them? What are these activities that we're doing with these students? Feel free. Somebody can start at the back and come on the way up, or if you're like, this is one that we keep working on with our students. What about communication strategies? Yes?
We're all adding them, but they're not showing up up there.
Oh, it might be kind of slow. Let me see here.
This is what it actually looks like.
Oh, you guys are amazing.
Lest you thought we weren't persistent.
All right, well, let's see what pops up. Identity might just be slow on my end.
Go back to the first one and see.
Maybe you guys have a whole bunch on the first. Oh, yes, they're coming up. Awesome. Oh, you guys are great. Perfect. Love it. And we'll go through some of these communication strategies. Love it. There's identity. The impact on access. Personal devices or aids. School-owned devices and aids. Right? And some of these can fit multiple categories. I think I saw DM system someplace. Of course, that can go on here too. Curricular modifications. I've got a couple ideas there myself. Services. What do we need to tell our kids so that they can advocate for themselves about services, the services that they receive? Transition. And this one's more your big T transition, so transition, high school transition. And I do not have this up, so hold on one second. You guys are going to see all the chats from people at my work. I'm going to unplug for a second so I can make sure that that is not on, as I don't have it up while you keep working. Tactile representation when possible. I love that. I love that. The more we can incorporate all the senses, the better. Love that. You guys have some great things that you're doing. And I think I mentioned, I tell parents, turn the captions on your TV, right? We unfortunately know that some of our kiddos, that's their babysitter, right? So why not expose them to print and have them reading at the same time as watching TV? Turn it on their devices, their iPads, get those captions on. Loop systems, I love that. There's a lot of legislation going on around that too. having loop systems in public spaces. AAC training in the home, that is awesome. We don't want our kiddos, and this goes for ASL as well, the only time they ever use AAC or sign language is at school, right? So I love that. Using technology that is available for all to support their needs, yes. And showing them how to do that with your students, right? Showing them how. I was just in a classroom the other day, and a little girl has Down syndrome, but also has the Baha on a soft band. They were using an AAC device with her, and I had just asked, and I said, is she connected through Bluetooth to that iPad? Oh, no? I said, there's two benefits of this. One is that you can monitor the Baha battery without having to actually remove the battery and test it yourself, because it's going to tell you in her iPad. But two, she's going to be able to have the sound of that AAC device will be going straight into her Baha. And so I helped to connect. And do you know what they told me? We have never seen her attend to the AAC system as much as she has right now, because she had that direct input. So one can't, we're not mutually exclusive here. We have to have all of these things. Co-treating, having a conversation. What is that SLP doing? What is that OT doing? How can you assist with that? OT sometimes, actually I can give you another example. I had a student, I think I already used an example of green, but here we are again, I'm going to use the example of green. But had a student, they were teaching her sign, lower cognitive functioning. And unfortunately, they did not have somebody there who was fluent in sign. They were just trying to teach her some signs, right? And so she kept going like this. And the OT is like, she must not really like, these sessions. All she does, like a lot of times I see her going like this. And she's shaking her face, or her finger in my face. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what are you doing during this time? Well, I'm trying to give her a choice, whether she wants this or what she wants this. And I said, well, what are these things? Can you describe them to me? I said, and better yet, let me see. One of them was a green object. She was doing this. She needed to do this, right? She was telling you what she wanted. But first, you didn't have anybody there who was fluent to even know that, right? We've got to have our best signers with our lowest language functioning kiddos. But also, these are if your teacher of the deaf was working with the OT during that, she would have been able to pick it up like that and say, oh, no, she's making a choice. She's choosing the green one. That was a sign that she knew was green. That was one that she knew. Now, did she know what that actual object was, and it was a train? Did she know that it was a green train and it actually had some different colors in it, but it was primarily green? I don't think she had the sign for train, but she wanted green and she was telling you green. But let's talk about that. What does she see when you're signing green to her? She sees this, right? When you're signing green to her, this is what she sees. So she was doing it the same way that you do it to her. No, but it wasn't no, it was green. So thinking about all of that, right? So we're not just using these devices or these signs at school. I know that's really, really, really hard. I gotta look up here, y'all. Deaf mentor, love it. Yes. Communication, vision aids. Yes, take a part in creating the accommodations list for their IEP. I love that. Kids, a lot of times, they don't know. What is it? What are these accommodations? Let's go through them. Let's talk about them. When are they appropriate? How do you access them? What do you do if they're not provided to you? A little tip I had, I always wrote in my IEPs the accommodations, other accommodations at the teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing's discretion, to kind of cover anything else that might pop up that we wouldn't have to go through and add later in that IEP. But I also had that if these accommodations were not provided, the student was allowed to leave the classroom and go to a resource room and contact me. Because if you don't have an accessible environment for my student, that's not okay. And we're allowing it to continue, right, if they don't have the access that they need. So they are allowed to leave and to contact me. And it's not a tattling, well, it kind of is, but it's also, they can't learn in this environment, so they don't need to be sitting in this environment. That's my opinion. So what can I do then to help you ensure that they can learn in this environment? Love this. Model role play, asking for accommodations. I love that too. And a really great place to do that is with our peers, right? So you can bring in other students on your caseload, but then also their hearing or their gen ed peers, right? Bring them in. Ooh, this one's super small. Yes, do not overcompensate. I love that. I love that. Oh, I'm turning things. Knowing their hearing levels, perfect. And knowing what that impact is and being able to describe that. Yep. Did you know that, so when you are itty bitty, let's say we're in preschool, in the preschool environment, right? If a gen ed peer comes up to you and they say, "What's that on your head?" Right? We want to make sure that our students, sorry, I'm relating this to deaf and hard of hearing, blind, low vision people, you guys take it away and apply it to your classrooms as well. But if they come and they ask, "What's that on your head?" And the kiddo is like, "Meh, I don't know." They're like, "That's weird. You have it on your head every day and you don't know what it is? Weird." At that age, not that big of a deal per se, except you're basically like, you've got something on you and you don't know what it is. So it kind of brings the kiddo down here. Now, if the peer comes up and they say, "What is that in your ear?" And they're like, "Those are my hearing aids. They help me hear." Or they're my super ears, or whatever you want to say, right? And this is what they do because I can't hear that well. Okay? Then by default, you're teaching that peer something that they don't know. So now, in like the social realm that we work in, you're up here. And that will carry through as they go throughout. So you're in preschool, again, not that big of a deal, but you are now viewed as smarter or up here because you know more things than our peer. So again, that carries through. If you have a student and they don't tell you, or they, wear their hair so it's covering so that they don't talk about it at all, they're ashamed of talking about it, the peers aren't going to keep asking what that is because you already gave them an answer because you don't know what it is, or I don't know what it is, So again, they're not going to keep asking that. So we want to make sure we set up our kiddos to be up here so they can talk intelligently about their bodies, right? They can talk about the accommodations that they need. Who's that lady who's with you all day long? Who is that? Oh, that's my interpreter. This is what she does. She helps me get access to what you all are saying in the class. And of course, we have to give it to them in little bite-sized pieces, whatever is developmentally appropriate, but it's really it's important to start at a very young age. So advocacy skills, that expanded core curriculum starts at a very, very, very young age. I love this. I hope you guys are getting some takeaways, maybe some things that you haven't considered. This is interesting too. Or accessing the community. Indiana just came out with the little visor cards. I think Illinois has already been, you guys have already had this, but we have the little visor cards. We've had more and more parents who have been asking for those just to have some information. So if you get pulled over by a police officer, you're able to communicate with them appropriately. So thinking about some of those things, especially this is kind of a transition activity as well, hey, how are you going to access that driver's ed test? How are you going to communicate with somebody? What happens if you get in a little fender bender? What are you going to do? How are you going to navigate communication with them? And having those scenarios is helpful. Love it. Communication strategies. Whew, that's huge. Huge. Communication repair. Yes, most definitely. I love to sabotage my students. It's kind of my goal in life. But I think it really sets them up. I don't know how many times I have had a group, a group of girls at middle school, high school, right? And they're all having a conversation, chit-chatting in the group, and then my student comes walking and they look over at my student and they're laughing and then, continue on. And I don't know how many times my student has said, they're laughing at me, they're making fun of me. Really, what did they say? I don't know, but they looked over and they were laughing. Well, they could have already been laughing over here. And you just happened to walk by, you caught their eye and they just continued having their conversation. That doesn't mean that they were making fun of you. Now, they could have been making fun of you, but that doesn't mean that they were making fun of you, right? So I love to sabotage my kids and they'll come in and, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what do you think I'm thinking right now? And say, well, I think you're mad at me. Nope, I'm not mad at you. What else? I don't know. Are you upset? Am I in trouble? Nope. I'm just really concentrating on something that I'm doing, right? Having them be exposed to this in a safe place is really helpful too. Also, having them to be able to talk to their peer group. I think it is helpful to say, hey, are you guys making fun of me? Were you talking about me? Or, hey, can I join you? Those kinds of things, just making it feel more of a safe place. But I will tell you, sometimes our students, they wear their emotions on their sleeves and they take everything at face value, right? And so that's not always the case. I also had another student, when she got home, unfortunately, her family couldn't communicate with her using ASL. And so they would kind of try to tell her, hey, we're leaving at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, we've got to go do da-da-da-da. And then she would get in trouble because she wasn't ready to go. And I'm like, what is happening here? And the parent was all upset. We tried to tell her, and then she has an attitude because she has to wake up early and she doesn't know why. It's just, we don't have communication here. So we have to, okay, what do we need to do? Visually, what do we need to do? How are we going to make sure that she knows the expectations and that you guys are both in agreement that this is what's going to happen? Because I'll tell you, if not, you're going to have a big blow up, or you're going to leave without her and she's going to feel left out, or, something. So again, making sure that we, not only at school, we have these things covered, but then at home as well. But you guys have some great ones. Email etiquette. This needs to be a course for it. I don't know who put that, but that's a great one. That wasn't one that I would have thought about right off the bat. But yes, our students, not just our students, all students. Let's talk about that. I feel like all students need to have a little bit more etiquette, especially when dealing with adults sometimes too. Love, identity, yes. Knowing what they need in this environment versus another environment. And how are they able to describe themselves? I love that. Yes. Oh my goodness. This self-identifying versus IEP label. I love that. I have had students who want to label themselves as one way, and I completely embrace that. Whatever you want, that's what I'm going to use, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about a stigma, with this label and that label. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yeah.
Also, it made me think of like when or how to teach our students the medical model as opposed to your deaf. It's a cultural difference.
Right.
Right? So it's like, yes, you have to learn about your hearing levels and your hearing aid, but that's just one way to think about it.
Right.
Your deafness, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is a cultural difference.
That's right.
So like.
So I'm going to repeat too, just so that way the camera has it and you guys can hear as well. But yes, so talking about the medical terminology, the medical model, the IEP. So I think we have this in here too, kind of that IEP label versus, and she had mentioned the deaf culture and the culture that you are a part of now, and all of that. So making sure that you explain that, right? So, you might have to put this down on a piece of paper because this is that medical label that we have, but this is who you are. And again, talking about how this makes them unique. This is what their superpower is. This is what can be celebrated about them because they are unique. And again, talking about it in that way, I feel like helps empower our kiddos and make them feel a little bit better about themselves. So I love this. Great. Impact. I would say a lot of times too, sometimes students are like, I do just fine, right? Functional evaluations are my BFF. Like I love to do functional evaluations, and I do functional listening evaluations. I also do them in sign as well. When they say, I don't need that. And I'll do a combination of the two. So I kind of make up my own based off of the kid and what they need. But it's like, hey, look, when I did this, you got about 40%. So when I did this, you're up to that 85, 90%. Okay, now you know. We empower, we inform, and I think that that's really helpful, especially as far as like hearing technology goes. I mean, you can forego that. That is completely your choice. I'm going to just give you the data so that you're aware, right? But I'm also going to show you all the cool functionalities that you can do with some of this too. I know we wait forever to add those other programs in our kids' hearing aids and things like that, and I'm like, no. This needs to start from very, very young, because I feel like it is important for them to be able, ooh, this is too loud. Let's be able to bump it down. Still in that range where they can still access, but let's be able to bump it down. Or this is how we connect to Bluetooth. All of those other device settings. Or this is a noisy environment. This is how I can access things a little bit better in this environment. We can have a setting for that. And I will tell you, if we don't have our kids at a younger age exploring some of those other options in technology, what happens is they want to use program number 1 for life. Right? Because it sounds weird, because their brain is a lot more plastic when they're younger to be able to kind of play around with some of these things and see what they like. So I love to be like, okay, what's easy for you? What's hard for you? Let's have a conversation with your audiologist about that. Background noise, the impact of that, yes. And then what do you do if it is a noisy background? Who do you go to? You guys have some great ones. Love. Naming the parts of the devices, but then also taking it one step further. What if a piece is broken? I actually had a student not too long ago decide to clean out her tubing with pencil lead. Got it stuck in there, right? So we need to, you need to know that's called tubing. You're right, it does need to be cleaned out. But what are we using? What tools are we using? Might be more appropriate than pencil lead because you got it stuck in there, because pencil lead breaks off pretty easy. Magnification, yes. I need magnification right now. I could actually make it bigger, but Cleaning, repairs, yes, being a part of it. That's right. I had another a parent who was like, those things cost so much money, I don't want him touching them. I'm like, they're part of his body. He's gonna have to touch them, especially because he's going to be in an environment where there might not be an expert around all the time, and he's gonna need to be able to put hearing aid batteries in and out. And he's in 5th grade now. So, yep, he needs to be able to touch them. But we need to teach him how to do it appropriately so we're not breaking the devices. I love that. Troubleshooting, basic troubleshooting when devices are not working. Yes. I love knowing the make and model number of hearing devices, but then also knowing where to find that, because their little eyes might be able to see it better than yours, because it's really kind of small on some of that. But also that helps them when we're talking about things later, and compatibility with other students. So I love that. School-owned, same thing. Seeing the device used by different people in different places around the school. That's great. That is great. Taking responsibility, yes. I don't know if you guys know this. In Indiana, it's interesting. But HAT system, interpreting, note-taking, that's all under ADA, right? And we're aware of that. So that can function outside of IDEA, so our special education law with schools. Basically, that means that if a parent or an individual requests this as an accommodation, it is legally required to be provided, and there's no timeline to waste. So that means if I come into the school and I say I need an interpreter, that has to be provided. There's no IEP decision that needs to be made. There's no 504 plan that needs to be created, which a lot of special education administrators are not aware of that because they focus on the state special education law. They don't necessarily focus on ADA, and ADA trumps everything IDEA. Do you guys find that battle here in Illinois? That they're aware, they're like, well, this kid is coming in and they're requesting HAT. The parents got a script from their audiologist. And, well, we've got to go through the evaluation process. We've got to test them. We've got to do this and this and this before we give it to them. That is against the law. So they could have an OCR complaint, Office of Civil Rights, if they don't provide that. It is the same law that requires accessible bathrooms, elevators, ramps, and curb cuts. It's under that same law in ADA. So there's no timeline to waste. Legally, it has to be provided if you are receiving federal or state funds. So you could have a private school that does not receive any state or federal funding at all, which those are kind of not the norm. Usually if they're doing state standardized testing, they will get some sort of funding. But you can have that. They wouldn't legally always be required to do it, but that's few and far between. Yep, a device needs to be available even if the student doesn't use it, and the law states that if it's if you have it, you have to monitor daily function of their personal devices and school purchased devices. So make sure you have documentation of that. Curricular modifications. One that I love to add here, music class. What do we need to do with that? Depends on the student, but sometimes we'll just play a CD and say, okay, name that musical instrument. All right, can we do that? I don't know. And then what about foreign language? That's a big one as well. It would be great if they can take ASL, but then what do we need to do for foreign language? I think that's a big one too. Those are two, I feel, modifications that we can make. Services, what services? How to request an interpreter, yes, and requesting an interpreter for a school-sponsored activity versus out in the community. You know what I love? I love to empower kiddos and say, no, this interpreter is for you. It's not for me. I know the language. This is for you to be able to communicate with me. So I love to teach students, oh, you need an interpreter? I don't need, I mean, I use an interpreter, yes, but, oh, my teacher needs an interpreter to be able to communicate with me. Yep. Yes, the asking accommodations in the workplace. Yep. And that goes with your, getting a driver's license as well, or how you're going to access different community events. Understanding their IEP, the more you involve them in the process, the more they are going to be prepared going forward. I'm full of stories. I had a student and she needed CART captioning, and she had requested it, and from her college that she went to, and they never gave it to her. They were trying to work through it. They were trying to set some things up, never gave it to her. She ended up basically flunking out of, she tried to teach herself the curriculum. She tried to go home and read the book, but the professor's lectures are never the same as the book, and so she's like, what do I study? I have no idea. Tried to teach herself the content and ended up basically flunking out. They finally gave her CART captioning March of her freshman year. And you know what she did? She sued that college and won. They had to reimburse her tuition. And although it kind of put a black mark a little bit, but they did not transfer those credits. She decided not to stay there anymore because she felt like they weren't accessible, and she moved to a different university that was going to be more accessible for her. But I feel like all the groundwork that we did about her rights, she called me after. She was like, guess what I did? And I'm like, girl, I need you to be standing up next to me sometimes, like talking to other students, because she's like, this is my right and I'm not getting it. And she was patient and trying to do it on her own, because she was enrolled and she was trying to do the best that she could do. But she, it was still a struggle for her. She sued that school and won. I don't want it to get to that point though, right? We don't want that to be the norm and be acceptable, but she tried, and she tried her best. And now she's doing amazing things, and she's actually working as a freelance videographer, and she also works on a fishing boat in Alaska. But if you guys ever watch Dr. Pimple Popper, I don't know, you're like, ugh, gross. You won't see her, but she's behind the camera. So it's kind of cool, right? She went on and did great things. Yeah?
I was going to say it's very unfortunate that you said it leaves a black mark on her, because I think that that's often the case.
Yeah.
That our kids are advocating, and they're like, oh, they're such a pain.
Yep.
They keep going, and that's really unfortunate for our students, that they have to be seen that way when they're just trying to get their needs met.
I agree. So she said that it's unfortunate that it left a black mark on her, and it shouldn't be.
She had to move schools.
Well, and she decided to move schools, I would say. I was like, you could stay there and just like stick it to them, but I felt like she felt like they weren't accepting of her. They weren't accommodating for her. So she was like, I'm going to move to a different school. And, I get that, right? And again, talking about the accommodations that schools can provide, I think one of the biggest things is say, how many other deaf and hard of hearing or blind low vision students do you have coming through here, and what kind of accommodations do you do already? Having these kinds of conversations as students go on college visits, I think are very, very important. So that way we can ensure that, whoop, this isn't the first one. She felt like it might be better to go to a smaller university, right? Because she knew that the class sizes were going to be smaller. So good for her, but they weren't accommodating. And so that was a little bit of a challenge. But I agree, it shouldn't be a black mark. And I feel like the more we can incorporate these UDL principles that we had kind of already talked about, the more we can infuse these, the more we can teach the teachers, teach society how to be accessible, then hopefully we can like kind of change that narrative so it's not a black mark on their name. I agree. I love, yes.
Did she already have CART in her high school?
Yes.
setting that she was trying to
Yes.
transfer that to the university?
Yes.
How did you go about getting that approved for her?
CART?
Yes.
Okay, so the question was, did she have CART in the high school setting, and then how did that get approved? CART is under ADA as well. If an individual requests CART, legally the school is required to provide it.
Thank you.
Yep. Period, the end. If not, of course, there are processes to contact the Office of Civil Rights if it's not provided. I know it's an expense, although we were just talking too about some of the cool features of AI that are coming about, right? Y'all watch out. So, I mean, this stuff is coming out, and I feel like now we can get pretty darn close. And I hate to say that, I am a type L transcriptionist by trade. I don't want to belittle the profession. I think it's very much needed, and it is the gold standard. However, I also know that some kids just kind of like to have that automaticity. They like to just have it available to them when they want to use it, not necessarily a formal accommodation, which can be done. But it's the same as requesting an interpreter. It's under that same law. It's the same as requesting hearing assistive technology. It's under that same law. So, so if an individual or their family makes that request on their behalf, legally schools are obligated to provide it. So talk to me later if you need more. I actually also, for a student in her same class who wanted to take French and used CART as well, we had both French CART and English CART happening at the same time, so she could access her French classes just the same as everybody else. That was interesting, but that can be done too. It takes a lot of work, but we can get there. All right. Thank you guys so much. Keep adding to that. As you think of things, feel free to keep going about. But I love just kind of collectively, there were some things that I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Great. So keep looking through that, adding some things that you guys find as you go. And we'll wake this guy up. There we go. Oh, my sneak peek. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek. So I was hoping that this would be available for publish. It is not yet, but I'm going to give you a quick sneak peek of our severity of needs profile that we're developing in Indiana. And we are taking lots of things into account in order to do this. So first, and the goal of this is to really highlight a lot of these areas that we need to work on with kids, and also being able to, hold on a second, let me make this so it's a little bit smaller. Also being able to determine what those service minutes look like, because it's kind of arbitrary, right? We all kind of have that gut feeling of what it needs to be. But so I'm really excited that this is going to come to fruition, but it's not here yet. But it does, I don't know, in Illinois, I know in Indiana, they're like, there's no academic impact. And I'm like, oh, let's talk about all these things, right? So my student that we were just talking about, she was a straight A honors student, but there was definitely an academic impact, right? Obviously, so much so that she went off to college and she knew her rights and she needed to get all the things that she needed to do, but without having these things, without learning how to access them, without being able to advocate for her needs, that is academic impact. And I don't know if you guys have some of that same terminology here, but expanded core curriculum, it's how we navigate. And this is interesting. So blind, low vision teachers, you guys have O&M, like orientation and mobility, right? That's how you like navigate and access your environment. I don't know why we don't have O&M for DHH, right? Because we do need to be able to navigate and access our environment for our kiddos who are deaf and hard of hearing. So sometimes I kind of equate it to the same thing. I hope that this will be available and out on our website at some point soon. But ultimately, we look at all of these different things with academic performance, with any of their audiological needs, with their functional listening, with social skills, with their expressive language, with receptive language, following classroom routines and participation, as well as if they're an English learner, checking off kind of where they fall in these domains. And then once you do that, and we'll say, okay, so if it's, this is more the student on this, and this one, and this one, and this one, it averages all together. And then we have additional contributing factors that need to be taken into account. For example, the child has auditory neuropathy. That in and of itself adds a couple of extra points there. And then once you add up, and it'll actually calculate it for you, it actually comes up with this is the suggestion for the frequency and the duration of service needs. And of course, it is just a suggestion. We're not saying that this is what has to be. We also know that as professionals, you guys need to make some of these decisions at that IEP table, of course. But sometimes people are like, it's hard to justify, because they're like, oh, I don't think they need a whole lot. Academically, they're doing well. They don't need a whole lot of anything. Okay, well, did you consider all of these other areas as well? So I know in Indiana sometimes that we don't always take that expanded core curriculum into account. So we also have another pragmatics piece that we add to this, and then we're building on our expanded core curriculum to include all of those things, being able to use a screener, and then based off of that screener to be able to give recommendations. So there's a little bit of a sneak peek. Contact me. I work for this state, and so sometimes things take a little bit longer to publish and put out there, but I hope that this will be available sooner rather than not. All right. Oh, okay. I was like, what happened? All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into student-led IEPs and in-services. So we're going to start with just a little bit of student involvement, and then we go all the way into the students running the show. By the time they're in high school, as long as, intellectually they are able, I want them to be doing this. And I don't need to do it anymore, right? So what I find is the path of least resistance is starting with the in-service process. We can modify some things that are already out there, and then we can increase the level of involvement as the student is ready. So what do we include? A lot of those things that we talked about, but I think first and foremost, we want to make sure that we include what does that kid like, right? What are their hobbies? What activities are they involved with? Do they play football? Are they speed skaters? What do they have, like 10 dogs at home? What do they love? Let's put that in. They are a human first, right? We don't let the IEP process define them, but let's talk about what they love. Let's embrace that and talk about that first. We talk about all those the hearing and vision levels, right? We can keep it simple. We can build on that. And then we talk about the impact on access as well, however that looks for that student. We add any related services that they may have. We talk about assistive technology. We, of course, put in those accommodations. We give some explanations. I think that's helpful. And also, we can add how-tos. Here's one that we created. I can actually, basically anything you need to caption at all, I've got a little tutorial here for you. So you can go over to that and you can see how to caption things or how to turn on automatic subtitles or how to do things in a lot of different platforms. One thing that we don't always think about is substitute teacher plans. Or what are you going to do if there is a sub? Maybe you have a really good kiddo who can say, no, I got this, I can advocate for my needs, but maybe not. So we need to take that into consideration. I actually just worked with a school, and they had a teacher who was out on an extended medical leave. But she was there at the very beginning. Teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing did a quick in-service with her, and then she was out for 3 months. There were different subs that were coming in and out and in and out and in and out. The majority of whom did not know how to use that microphone system that the child had. And he got to the point where he was kind of nervous and unsure about going to school because he kept feeling like he had to go and he had to tell these adults on what to do. And some of them were not always the most receptive. I have to do what? Where what? What? You know, oh, I don't have time for that. I'll just put it down here. Right? And so it got to be a burden on him, and that's completely inappropriate to put that burden on our students. And he was trying, but it got to the point where he was like, oh, okay, needed some adult intervention, right, to be able to make sure that those subs were aware. But again, it is really hard when you have kind of a revolving door of substitutes coming in. Emergency preparedness. What happens if your student is in the bathroom or away from your class when you have those drills that are happening? Another thing I will tell you, I hate that we even have to talk about this, but a lot of times we have the intruder drills that we're doing, right? And what does that mean as far as access, and how will your student get the information that they need in order to be safe? And that's huge. So I take it upon myself to make sure, and we teach our students, this is why, this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that we are, following directions, and this is what we do. And sometimes we have to rehearse this outside of the rehearsal that they're doing in the classroom. Okay. Yes.
So what suggestions do you have for that emergency preparedness with an intruder? Because a lot of times it's just over the intercom.
That's right. So what suggestions for the intruder alert? So we have made visual signs in the classroom too. So a lot of times there will be a visual sign. I also, I didn't include it in this presentation, but a lot of times where the teacher mainly stands, we've done those little touch lights. This is what we're doing, so that they're, and you can use these for a lot of different things in the classroom. So it's quiet time. I've got the touch light on. It's a visual. We're all just working at our seat. This light is on. That means you can come and approach me. We've used those touch lights for emergency signals even. I say, if it's possible to have, your strobes, including the strobes for your fire and tornado at least, right? If you have those strobes that can also be included. Some of that can be retrofitted pretty easily. Or we establish a buddy system too, right? And you're gonna need more than one student. And we don't wanna necessarily have to put this on a student, right? And their responsibility, but I feel like the more things that we have in place, it's a better safeguard than if we don't. So I would rather have many, many, many more things in place for that. Yeah, did you have something that you do?
ISD and ISVI have an extensive system in their school buildings for visual alerts. They're running boards with signs and things like that, so they would be a really good resource. I think Amy Keith would be the best person to ask.
Yeah, so use your yes, I will. Yep. So the comment there was that ISD and ISVI. So funny because ours is ISD too. But so they have some things already that they incorporate in their classrooms, and so they would be a really good resource for you to go to as well as what's available to you guys here in your state. But the more things that we can put in place, the better. One thing that I love as well is when any child leaves the classroom, to have a touch light. I love those, the touch lights are super cheap, but having a touch light to let somebody know that there's a kid in the bathroom. And then when you come back, you turn it, the kids can turn it on and off themselves, but that's a visual indication that somebody is in the restroom, and we need to make sure that we get that person in the event that, there's an emergency drill or something like that. So lots of little innovative things that you can do, but I feel like if you can have a first plan, and if that doesn't work, having 2 or 3 backups that are available, like the buddy system, having 3 buddies that you guys are gonna be like, oh, all my buddies are here, everybody can have a buddy, oh, my 4 buddies are here, or I know that Sally is out because she's absent, so my 3 buddies are here, so making sure that you have all of those safeguards as well. the more that you can have, the better, unfortunately, in this day and age, and that's a really sad thing. So, also including the roles, the role of the teachers, the role of the interpreters, the role of other support staff that are coming in, how to use them, how to have them placed. I know especially with subs, they don't understand always. Jenna, teachers don't always understand, but making sure that we have that available so that it's kind of clearly laid out. You guys, I'm going to show you so this is our general in-service that we have. Feel free to take it, use it, tweak it, make it your own. And you can take this and modify it for your own students, or you can just take some of the ideas as well and incorporate that. And I'm just going to run through some of these things very quickly. I give stats a lot of times. I love doing building wide, by the way. I mean, it just kind of helps to do building wide when you can. So get a PD day, and then you can go through professional development day, sorry. And you can do this for everybody who's in that educational environment, or the majority of the people. The more you can do that, the more that everybody knows. And it's very, very, very helpful to be proactive instead of having to go into that classroom and say, guess what? You didn't provide this accommodation. So I have just stats that I go through and just talk about kind of statistics in Indiana. That's a pretty good one. Only 1% of IEPs are for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. Do you guys have the statistic for blind low vision? Is it about the same? Is it about the same? If you have one kid, you have one kid. They all need different things. I talk about hearing screenings. I talk about best practice of what that is. A lot of times I like to meet with whoever is doing the hearing screenings in the class or in the building too. I give a lot of examples, and I'm going to go into a little bit more. Have you guys seen this one? Hopefully it doesn't. I don't know. It might start playing. Yep. Oh, sorry. They laugh at that, and it's funny, and it's meant to be funny, but this is reality too. So I always make sure to point that out, that this is reality for so many of our kids. This is a really good one. I'm going to go through that.
So when I was really young,
I talk about lip reading because they're like, oh, they can read my lips. Great. Yeah, we get a lot of, we have to talk about communication repair strategies all the time because they are working on lip reading and didn't get the message quite right. So only 30 to 45% of the English language can be understood through lip reading alone. And then what happens if you're a non-native English speaker, if you have a mustache, you're wearing red lipstick, right? And you're, 30 feet away. How well does that go? Or what happens when we turn around and write on the board? Can't lip read you then. So anyways, I'd like to kind of talk about that, give them a quick challenge as well.
Hey guys.
I talk about how we hear. This is how, the hearing mechanism works. I talk about the different categories. I go through what an audiogram looks like, how the hearing levels look like, the piano and quiet pitches and loud pitches. I talk about the prevalence according to the CDC and what that looks like. I think that people always assume that profound deafness is the majority. It's actually the minority. I don't know if you guys know that. But it's interesting to be able to talk about that. So you have kiddos who might have a unilateral or single-sided deafness or whatever. So making sure that they know many of these students are out there too. Talking about normal conversational speech. I give a simulation. You guys know Flintstones? Of course we know Flintstones. That's a great one. How you hear with hearing aids. If hearing aids are working the way that they should, right, that's how you hear with hearing aids. How we hear with cochlear implants. There's a simulation for that as well. This is very eye-opening, I feel. How we hear with bone-anchored devices. Hearing assistive technology, what does that look like? This is another simulation of what it's like in the classroom, and I think that's very helpful because so many people think, I put this on, we're good, right? We're good to go. Don't need anything else beyond that. This is a really good one. This actually just came out from Phonak not too long ago, but it talks about when we have a video playing and we don't connect the hat system to it, right? So the teacher is wearing the microphone and we've got this video playing and the teacher, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but she's like, oh, this is really important. Make sure you know this part. And she's talking about it while the video is playing, but it's not connected. And so, and then you have other students in the room who ask questions, and then the teacher was like, yeah, yep, that's gonna be on the test, or it's not gonna be on the test, or whatever it is. And so, what's not gonna be, I don't know, what is gonna be on the test? I have no idea. That's a really good simulation as well. We talk about the importance of monitoring daily function. Here's real quick how to do Ling, although I teach now the LMH 10. Yeah? You guys doing the 10 sound? If not, let me know. I can send that resource to you as well. But this is how to do it. Some students use sign language as well. Here's the difference between ASL, PSE, and SEE. I think that can be very eye-opening as well, because most people think, oh, isn't it universal? You all do the same thing? No. All right, click. Just talking about the educational setting, talking about educational implications. We already touched on some of this with all of our sticky notes. Some social implications that we have. Some difficult situations for our kiddos. There's that music class. That's in there. Fire drills were also in there too. I include this. I don't know if we're going back. We might be going back, but maybe not. But everybody struggled when it was the masquerade, right? When we all had our masks on, everybody was struggling with that. I love to do functional listening evaluations with masks as well. That was very eye-opening, very eye-opening. And everybody's like, oh, well, they'll do better if they have the clear mask. Well, a lot of those clear masks, it would hit that plastic and it didn't transmit the sound. I had some kids that they needed that visual access. They did much better. I had other kids that you just dampen that speech signal even more, and so they did better with the medical grade masks. What do our kids look like? Oh, and then I have a whole bunch of my UDL tips, and I grabbed some of those and I put them in the presentation previously. And I talk about clip charts. I hate clip charts. You can read about why I hate clip charts. But I wouldn't want anybody to ever put a clip chart of me and my weight loss journey by the cooler, right? Like, why are we putting everybody's behavior on display? So really, I feel like we should not highlight our shortcomings, and then by doing that, it just is a snowball effect. If you guys want resources on this, this is one behavioral management strategy that I see happening all over the place. And I think it's very discriminatory, especially for special populations. And so anyways, we discipline kids in private and we teach kids how to manage themselves. So that's a big one as well. I just include some UDL stuff in this presentation. I talk about common accommodations as well and go through those. Talking about like different roles, but feel free to take this and use it and make it your own. You are more than welcome. It's available to you. So make a copy of it and definitely use that. Or not, you might have something that you already have. All right. Okay. So what I like to do when we are starting with the in-service process is I conduct the in-service to the school, and then I want my kiddos to just follow up. Okay, so I do kind of the formal thing, and it depends. Sometimes I just take, and it'll just have a list of their accommodations and other things like that, links to additional resources. I make sure to staple a lifesaver or some other candy to it, and then I have my student actually go around from class to class and they give it. And so all we're doing in the beginning of that year is making that connection from this student goes with this accommodation or this in-service that we did. So that's kind of like first and foremost, I'm doing it, but they're aware of the process, and we're going to then build on that. Then I like to do like an interview and create in-service videos. I love videos. I used to do PowerPoints all the time, but I love videos. I have a couple, and I'm hoping that sound works. I know that you guys could hear it playing, but I don't know if it was, I think it will because it's HDMI. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it through here. And so we can do PowerPoints, but I love doing videos. And this can be your annual goal, a self-advocacy goal that you work on with these kiddos. And then I can share, student follows up, or the student can share. That's the end goal, is that they will share it. And then I love, love, love creating a learning experience for the adults as we're going along. Oops, sorry. This is a quick and dirty way of doing it as well. So what I love is also using pictures. And we can put this on, maybe they have a box that they have that you've delivered to the room, and it has HAT, all of their stuff for their hearing assistive technology. And so you can put these pictures on here. You can also take pictures of what's inside, and these things should be there at the end of the school year, hopefully, as well as QR codes or links to troubleshooting. I love that. But if we find, so this actually was created when we had a teacher who was notorious for wearing that mic down here, right? And so we're like, yep, that's not good. This is where we need to do it. And if we can have that student take it to the teacher, it's a lot less threatening than if I go in there and I'm like, let me adjust this up for you. So, so if there is something going on or the kid's like, I really can't access this, let's think about how we can incorporate the student in this and help them to build their advocacy skills then, and then take the I guess, adult to adult interaction away or minimize some of that, unless of course it's absolutely necessary, right? It's also great to bring in a friend, right? So we can bring in some peers with us and be like, hey, I'm taking a picture of where it should be, and I'm taking a picture of where it shouldn't be, and then that peer knows, and that peer's on the lookout as well. So it doesn't have to just be your student. Okay, so this is an example of one of my students. She created a PowerPoint, and again, they can have their choice of what they want to do. If they want to do it live, they're more than welcome to do it live. But this is what she created. She was obsessed with One Direction at that time. She does talk about how we hear, right? Gives information about that. She actually wanted to present this to her teachers. So she took this and presented it a little bit more formally. So that was great. She talks about how we hear. She talks about how she hears with her hearing aid. I like that, of course, a lot of this I'm guiding her and giving her some of this information. She just wasn't, pulling this out. But again, so that she was able to give it and she knew enough about it so that she could talk to the audience about that. This is what I love. So she's just being very vulnerable here and saying, okay, what I know is that sometimes I pretend to understand when I don't. She knows that. We've talked about that. She put it in here. I love that. I need to watch other students to understand instructions and to make sure I'm doing the right thing. It might look like I'm copying, but I can't not look. So she had a very traumatic experience where she had to pull a French fry when she was younger. Again, clip chart, pull a French fry, flip a card, move your strawberry, whatever it is, right? Where she kept looking over at her peer. And this is when she was younger. But it stuck with her so much that she remembered it to put it here. She's like, I have to look to make sure I'm doing the right thing. I have to look. I have to look. And she's like, I try to just not look, but it's a prolonged look. And so the teacher was like, you're looking at your neighbor's paper. No, she wasn't. So she had to pull her French fry because she was copying. And she's like, I wasn't copying. But it's the kid versus the adult. I saw you looking at her paper. Nope, she just wanted to make sure, did you say I had to stop at number 10 or whatever it was, right? So much so that this one we created this presentation was when she was in middle school, 8th grade, I believe. That happened when she was in 1st grade. But she remembered it because she got in trouble for it. This is also my peanut she would turn around. Of course, she had preferential seating, so she was seated near the front of the room. She would turn around and talk to her peers, and she was just chatting, right? The teacher came in, told everybody to be quiet. She's still chatting, and she would have to pull a French fry for that as well. So again, making sure that the teachers are aware that this is what it might look like, right? It might look like she's not following directions, and yep, she's probably the last one talking because she didn't hear you coming into the room. Now, if you came into the room and you put your hand on her shoulder, tap, tap, okay, everybody eyes up front. Now, she probably wouldn't have been the last one talking, but if she was, I expect a consequence, right? Because she would have been the last one talking, right? So, but she remembered this and included that in her in-service later. Here it is. It's in here. I don't always understand why I get in trouble, especially for talking. If you told the class to be quiet and I was talking, I probably didn't hear you and kept right on going. That was her words. I love it. And I don't like to miss it or to admit it, but I have no idea when I miss something you said because we have to point this out. Nope, you heard me say, but what I actually said, right? What did you hear? And we have to model that instead of saying, huh, or what, right? Especially in social groups. And we have to tell our students that if there's a social group and you go to we were just having a conversation for 10 minutes and you're like, what did you say? Your peers, and what do they say? And all of our kids hate it. Never mind. Or I'll tell you later. They hate that. And I'm like, you know how bad you hate it? They don't know what you missed that 10 minutes they were having a conversation. They have no idea what you missed. And they don't even know how to go back and retrace their steps and be like, oh geez, so I talked about going over to my friend's house, we were jumping on the trampoline, and then what? Like, okay, so what we need to model to our kiddos is saying, okay, you heard them talking about going over to their friend's house and jumping on the trampoline, but then you didn't hear what they said after that. So what did you say after you got done jumping on the trampoline? Because then our peers are more likely to be like, oh, and then we went inside and we watched a movie. That they would be more than willing to recap that little bit, but if you just stood there in that conversation for 10 minutes and let them go on and then you said, what? They are going to say, that's too much. I don't have time. I got to get to class before the bell rings. They're not going to repeat themselves. And then you're going to be frustrated and they're going to be frustrated. And then that just doesn't help that situation at all. These accommodations make me happy. The FM system, all the time too, for sports and field trips. Strategic seating, it helps if you ask me where is the best place for me to sit, right? But it changes it might change as I get to know you and your routine and where you like to, talk all the time, or if you're always back at your desk and I'm in the front, well, that's not helpful. So we added that in there. Please, please, please look at me when you're talking. Just a gentle reminder. We know that the classroom dynamics, that's not always possible. And put on the captions when we're watching movies. I can't take notes while watching a movie with or without captions. I can't. I'm not asking her to kind of give a little wiggle room on that accommodation. She just says, nope, I can't. So now you know I can't. I'm not going to try it because this one didn't have captions. No, I can't do it. It's hard. Don't just ask me if I understand because I'll nod my head. I heard what you said then, but I didn't understand what you said the last 20 minutes. If my homework isn't written where I can see it, I may not know about it. So please write it on the board. If everybody is packing up, it is a noisy environment, and you say, hey, don't forget, you got to finish that page. And I didn't do it. I don't want to be penalized for that. When my friends talk, if you could help pass the mic or repeat what they said, that helps me hear them, right? If we can make it, this mic or whatever the mic you're using is not a scary adult-only thing. I know sometimes we drop it and they break, but get warranty, extended warranty plans. But we need to be passing these things around and letting that be more acceptable. It doesn't just have to be the teacher who wears it. Pass around mics are great. They do break frequently though. Please use spelling words in a sentence so I can figure it out in case I can't hear it. And a sentence with meaning, right? So there's no guessing like rune, hello, right? There's no guessing what in the world that is. If you just stand up here and say rune, rune, spell the word rune, R-O-O-N. You know, but if you gave me some context, I might have done a little bit better on that. And then if you forget, don't worry, I have reminder cards. So here's a copy of my self-advocacy reminder cards. And this is what I love. I laminate them. I used to actually have a space that I would have the teacher kind of give their initials, and then they would put it in my mailbox if my kid used it, because I was kind of trying to monitor how, and then that just never happened. So, so I make these, sometimes I'll put them on a key ring, sometimes I will just have them laminated and they put them in their desk. So what's on here are my words, they're my words, but they're for them to use in the event that I'm not there, okay? And you can have there's a whole bunch of them here, I'll show you what they look like. And it'll force you to make a copy, but you take them and make your own. I need strategic seating. I need notes over the material we're covering in class. Reminder, I use an interpreter. Please grant me extra time on this assignment or assessment. I use American Sign Language. I can voice for myself. I'm an independent worker. I prefer you to interpret side conversations going on in the classroom that a person with normal hearing would be able to hear. Now, let's say I have a sub-interpreter. Doop. Here you go. And we could create these together with our students. I actually like to print them on colored pieces of paper so they don't get lost, and we have them like in a little pencil case or something like that so that they have them. Maybe I need modified dictation. Maybe I need note-taking. I can't do that, but I've got a sub today, and she doesn't know. Oh, please use the microphone. Thank you. I've noticed you weren't wearing it all morning, so I need that. Hey, there's an assessment coming up, and I need to study. I need a study guide. I need to have my assessments read aloud. I need music class, foreign language accommodations. I need to take all my tests in a different room, in resource. I need a copy of oral directions that you gave. You know, so I've got all of these things, and you can make them, you can take this, you can use my words if you want, but then you can add your own accommodations for your own students too. So please do. I do recommend laminating them if you can, otherwise you might have to provide them over and over and over again, but that's fine, it works. But I will say that this really helps. So like we've already done our in-service, or I've done the in-service with the teacher, but that kid is the one in the class experiencing it. And if they're not getting some of those accommodations that they need, they can be like, oop, here you go. And we talk about when it's appropriate to be able to use these. Sometimes it's immediate, right? We might need to. Sometimes it's helpful to kind of sneak in and just do it kind of on the side there. Are we right at time? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I'll answer your question, and then I think we can break for lunch. Yeah?
Could this be a thing that you, like, you print out the accommodations that are most appropriate to them, and that they can have it, and like with like a key ring? So
Yes.
that whenever they have a sub, or whenever there's a situation where accommodations aren't being provided to them, they can just choose sub.
Yep. Yes, that's exactly what I do. So do you have it on a key ring or something like that? Most definitely. Yes, yep, I just did. So yeah, he was asking if I could put it on a key ring or have something available so that they could just pull it out and whatever if they had a sub or something like that. So yes, you can, whatever works best for your student, and make sure you have a conversation. Sometimes it's just they have them in a notebook or in a folder, or you can put them on a key ring as well. Sometimes they only need to use one, right? They don't need to do all of them. And sometimes you don't have to have all of their accommodations printed and available in this way. But those those things that they can monitor, and then they can give these to the teachers, especially substitutes, then that's really, really helpful. All right, we are going to break for lunch. All right, well, while you guys feel free, again, if you need to stand, if you need to go, move about, I completely respect that. We've got to take care of our bodies. So anyway, so a couple of the things, and I alluded a little bit to this, but we have to remember how adults learn, especially when we're talking about giving in-services. So one thing, so everybody, we have a licking challenge. I bet you didn't know that that was going to happen today, but let's think, what would it be like to lick this wall? Go ahead and lick it. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that. But I think it's kind of bumpy, yeah? This texture here. You guys know what it's like, or what it would feel like if you were to lick the wall. You know what it would be like to lick the table. I don't recommend doing that, but you know what it's like. Why do you know what it's like? How would you know? Experience, right? Because you put everything in your mouth as a baby, and that's how you learned how textures were going to feel, right? So this is an example that I like to give when it comes to hearing or vision, right? So we know what the sound of a fire truck is like because we've had those experiences. We know what a chocolate chip cookie looks like because we've had those experiences. So sometimes not all of our students have had all of those experiences, but the reason why you know how things would feel on your tongue without actually having to lick them is based off of experiences. So I like to give these kinds of experiences so that people can kind of internalize and connect, hopefully, to some of our students. So I think that using this experience kind of model in our in-services are key. It really clicks. They know what it's like. It's better received than just saying you have to follow this and this and this accommodation. I love to give them a challenge, right? To see if they can navigate their way through this or that. We give them a quiz, and eventually, or as soon as possible, I like to include our students. I have a lot of resources for in-services. If you want to click down here, you're welcome to.
We sang
Oh,
Taylor Swift's
sorry.
most popular song, and let YouTube.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm hoping that you guys can listen. I might have to get kind of close to my computer here, but here's here's an example of a couple of my in-services. Oh, maybe not. You're not going to get it at all.
That's a lot of arms. And he has a lot of legs. And he has big legs.
What's his name?
Dr. Octopus. My name is Johnson, and my favorite superhero is a Ghost Rider. I like Spider-Man Age of Ultron with Ghost Rider. The Hulk. The Hulk is really big. He's green. And he's really big. And he looks like a big monster, but he's a Hulk. And he has big arms. Hulk's not strong. My favorite thing to do is play games. My glasses help me see and my hearing aids help me hear.
Very nice. Can you see him? Very nice.
I heard when my teacher says when someone else is talking. I like it when someone reads my test to me. It helps when I sit near the teacher. I use my headphones. And all the time.
At the computer?
Yes.
And what do you do with your hearing aids?
And I do with when I'm done with them at home, I've been in mommy's room and I just play my game. Spider-Man, Captain America, Fireman on Fire, Ghost Rider, Hulk, Thor, Spider-Man, and the bad guy is Dr. Octopus.
Okay, what did you guys notice was different with that second one? This is how she accesses her world. She has Chiari malformation. She hears absolutely nothing, and that developed over time, okay? So we wanted to drive home the point, this is how she hears, right? And so what I think is so great is that, what we tend to do with this is we give a quiz to the teachers. And I say, okay, can you tell me what her hearing levels are? And it's actually a paper, right? And we tell them that they have to complete it at the same time that they're watching this in-service. And then I ask all the questions in that part where she was just talking, and there's no sound and there's no captions. Those are the questions that we ask. And I say, okay, question number 1. Somebody give the answer. Question number 2, give the answer. Question number 3. And then I'm like, okay, what was your score? All right. Now, if you do the same thing in your class, this is what she experiences. So when they actually get to experience what it's like, it connects so much better than if I just go in and say, hey, teacher, you got to put on captions. Why? Because she talks to me, yes, because she was born hearing, and then the summer between her 8th grade and 9th grade year, she lost everything. And so now she doesn't hear anything at all. And so this is why she might appear like she's hearing, but she's actually not. Huge, huge impact when you have the student involved. So it can really help that collaboration. It increases those self-determination skills. Teacher buy-in when they're like, oh, I get it. Okay, instead of just you present the paper and say these are the accommodations that you have to follow, and they don't really even know why. You give your students that skill of explaining those hearing levels or whatever their needs are, and it helps to establish stronger relationships with staff, and there's that accountability piece too. So instead of me having a conversation over here with teacher, and then the student isn't even a part of that, they don't know what I've communicated to the teacher, and so this helps that accountability. A lot of research also shows that students who lead their IEPs and in-services know more about their disabilities, their rights, appropriate accommodations than kids who don't have these experiences. The earlier you start, the more likely the student will continue to embrace and use those aids and services effectively and not reject them as they get older. They gain that confidence. They can continue to advocate for themselves because we've set up that platform for them to be able to do that. And we actually have an increase in parent participation. I don't know about you, but sometimes you have parents who never show up to those IEP meetings, right? Well, if their student is the star of the show, their child, and they're going to tell you, Mom, I'm doing this tomorrow, blah, 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 and you're coming to my meeting, it increases the parents' participation. And that kid's going to be talking about it at home too. The school staff has a greater appreciation and understanding, and I think that they're just more eager to be accommodating, and then the student is more prepared for responsibilities that they will assume than after we leave school. So those are in-services, but let's go ahead and kick it up to IEPs, okay? Who doesn't love a good transition IEP? But this process should happen way before transition. I don't know about you guys, but legally we don't have to include the kids until they're older, but I include them as young as possible. The more they can sit around this, I don't want it to be something that's completely unknown by the time they come to high school. So what do? We have to talk about just giving them, just open the discussion, talk about their different learning styles and their preferences. What do you know? What don't you know? We talk about their rights. We kind of go into detail, of course, as that's developmentally appropriate, you know, making it student friendly so that they understand when this might apply, when this might not apply. We talk about accommodations. We talk about their goals in school or what happens in extracurricular activities or what's going to happen in the future. And we also really hit on privacy, right? That these meetings here, it's not meant to be shared out to everybody. We're not going to be having conversations with your peers about it, but that, you know, so that they know that their information is kept confidential. We talk about what in the world is an IEP. We can't have them, expect them to lead it without knowing what that is. But I say, let's not wait and let's teach them as soon as possible. We go over a general outline of what's covered in an IEP, kind of the flow. Oh, you see I have case conference in there, I apologize. This is a term that is exclusive to Indiana. Nobody else uses this. Case conference just basically means an IEP meeting, so you know. So sorry, I threw that. It just rolls off the tongue when I say case conference. But if I do say case conference, you know I mean IEP meeting. But then, of course, having these discussions about what is it, it helps them to understand, of course, their own IEP. This, unfortunately, they've taken this website down, and I still use her stuff. So here it is. But this was just a basic template of what is included in an IEP, why you have an IEP, the goals that are in your IEP, and then we have conversations about what are your goals, and let's help to create some new ones for you. It doesn't mean you don't get to have any goals, right? Obviously, you have to have some goals, but this is why. We talk about accommodations, and then, okay, what are some tricky environments for you? What can we do to help modify that? Let's talk about your entire day, and as you go about your day, and what are some things, and maybe it happens this year, but you've never had this experience. Well, we might need to create an accommodation for that. What are some related services? What does that even mean? And then, you know, we talk about what that IEP meeting is, or that case conference, and then how to present that. Here's a little bit of a matrix of the different topics. And so I use this just as like a teaching point, but I will also have students who and if this is the first step, maybe you just introduce all the people at the table. In my job now, I travel across the state, and you know how many times I meet with a kiddo and they don't know who somebody is at their table? They've never seen them. Maybe they're providing consultation, right? But they don't know who that person is. What if there is something related to that and they need to know who that person is? As itinerant teachers, you guys come in and out of buildings. Not everybody knows who you are there. Just a hint, make sure that you make your presence known. I do also go into schools sometimes and I will ask, oh, who is your teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing? And they don't know. I'm like, well, certainly you've got one, right? But they don't know. So it is very easy for us to kind of slide in and slide out, but make yourself known as you go along. We talk about how they're the I. This is why it's individualized. It's not the same for anybody or for everybody. Why do you need an IEP? We're going to talk about your strengths. We're going to talk about your needs. What are we going to do this school year? What services the school is going to provide? How you're going to learn. We talk about those different academic goals, and we talk about why they have these academic goals, as well as functional goals. And we might have one or not the other, and that's okay, but we're going to talk about some of those things. And sometimes through this process, we find other areas that they do need goals by having conversations. And kids are kind of more willing to admit some of those things and say, you know, this is tricky for me. And you're like, I had no idea. We talk about those accommodations. We go through all of the different accommodations and why they're helpful and why you might need them. Of course, when you're working with a preschooler, this is going to look a little bit different, but you cater it to their age too. And the people, what I love, so that example that I just gave, they don't know who these people are. It's very helpful if you can have pictures or, a description of this is where this person's office is, and that sort of thing. And you can add all of that information in there as well. Here's all of the areas in the IEP, going through all of that. Having them ask questions about their own IEP. Why is that there? Or do you know why this is in your IEP? And sometimes I have met students who are later on and they don't even know what an IEP is and they're in middle school and they're like, I've had this since when? I didn't even know this existed. So I think it's really helpful. Take that IEP from this year, have them highlight the things, have them write in the margins about things. It's their plan, it's for them. So have them talk about some of those things that they see. And sometimes as you're going through it, it'll spawn additional conversation too. Let's see. Oh, and then it's great to also then say, okay, now that you talked about this, go home and talk to your family members about this too. That's another safe place. And we can also practice with the other students that we have in the building because we're going to be bringing them around with each other. I also like to do an IEP scavenger hunt, helping, finding different places in the IEP where these things are and seeing if they can find those. I think that template is in there as well. This one, I do know that this template is in there, but it talks about me. It's several pages, but who are my friends? Things that are hard for me, activities that I enjoy, things that I do really well in. And this kiddo here, reading quietly in video games. Who else can put video games on theirs, right? So I work best when I work by myself in small groups with a partner. They can check off all of these things and you can walk through this throughout the year. I like to also include surveys, right? So we have to talk about strengths and needs. I like to incorporate the students to see if they can engage all those other adults in their lives and ask them what they think their strengths and needs are. How are my grades? How is my attendance, my participation, self-advocacy, and that kind of thing? And you can make this however, it can just be a little quick interview. You can create a Google form together, whatever, or you can just use some pictures or whatever helps in this scenario. I've got a couple of examples if you guys need a little bit more there. Gathering data and test results. This shouldn't be something that our kids don't know anything about. This is how you performed on this test, and we can talk about some of those things too. This seems like this is an area that's a little harder for you. So this is why we're going to create a goal to kind of beef up those skills so that you can, bring those lower scores up a little bit. And know how to get those different reports. This one I love. I love creating teacher report cards. Yeah. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you deal with students who have lower test scores and the social and emotional support that comes along with that? Again, I think a lot of this stuff goes back to, celebrating that uniqueness and talking about what makes this person unique and what makes this person unique. We know that not all of our students are going to bring up those areas, right? They are functioning where they can best function. But what I love to do is I talk about, let's give yourself a grade for effort, more so than the grades. And if you gave yourself an A for effort, then it should be reflected that you're doing the best that you can possible, and if you are like, I gave myself a C or a D for effort, then that person has not given their very, very best. So for me, all I care about is that you're giving your top effort that you can give, and if you are, then we should see that reflected in the scores that are going to be kind of matched to where you are. And if we can match those scores for them, I feel like that kind of helps them to accept. And again, going back and talking about identity and knowing you know what, it's okay. You just take, you have a little bit more time to process, you need a little bit more time to process, and then you will get these skills as well. I really feel like having open dialogue about that, and so that they know that this might be why they're not performing the same as their peers. But good question, and we can talk about that. Like if you want, feel free to email me. We can bounce off ideas too. But again, I'm not one to hide anything from students, and I'm not one to overinflate things either. Like we need to be real. We need to be real with parents, and we need parents to have real expectations as well. Sometimes we need to have those come to Jesus meetings with parents too, and those aren't always the most comfortable. But I think the more you can just, in general, have those conversations. So what I love to my kids to give report cards to their teachers. Okay, this can look a lot of different ways, but it's a great opportunity. We have parent-teacher conferences, right? I like to have student-teacher conferences, and I'll help to facilitate that. So I have my kids grade their teachers on their use of the accommodations in their IEP. Oh, heck yeah, I do. And we talk about it, and we will talk about it separately, and then we'll say, great, now we're going to have a meeting with your teacher, and you are going to explain to your teacher their report card. They do it to them, right? This is why you got these grades. Fair's fair, okay? And you can kind of create them however you need to create them. You guys know your teachers. Some teachers you probably wouldn't even need to necessarily do this with, but I let teachers know. You're giving my students grades, they're going to be giving you a grade. I let them know that up front, so it's not like an I gotcha. I don't like an I gotcha. I want everybody to be doing all the accommodations that they need to do, for their kids. And we also know that we all have areas that we need to improve, right? Teachers included. So students love this. And I'm like, you have to be truthful, right? We know, we might have a snarky kiddo who's like, F, no, we need to be truthful. But if it's truly an F, like this shouldn't be the first time I'm hearing of this. We need to stage an intervention. But it's great for them to say, okay, look, do you face me every time that you're speaking? And then let's have a conversation about that. Let's bring the student and the teacher together and just say, you know what? You like to go all around the room. A lot of times the teachers aren't even aware that they're doing this. Right? And so we can kind of go through that this is why they got the rating that they did. And then I include this when we talk about accommodations and talk about what they need, and then talk about what's going to go into the IEP. Yeah?
Are teachers generally receptive to this, or are they defensive?
Are teachers acceptive of this or defensive? It depends. I would say that I let them know, again, ahead of time, and just say, hey, we're going to give you a teacher report card too. So I think that's really key. And so usually they expect that it's going to happen. I don't let it wait and linger, right, either. So, that first, grading period, we want to make sure that we do it so that way we're all on the same track and it's not like last minute. But I also think it's very helpful. And many times for my older kiddos, I'm not even involved with it. And I'm like, oh, we said that this is something that you were going to do. Johnny's filling it out. I need you guys to have a little discussion about this. So that way, they really don't get defensive with a student, I find, okay? So more so a little bit with me. But hey, I helped to create the report card. I didn't fill it out. Right? So, but I also feel like, you can kind of stage it and say, this is a time, kind of for self-reflection and maybe, but there's two sides to every story. So, the teacher can say, oh yeah, we have this new curriculum and it's been tougher for me and I have to run back to my computer and push play and come back up and back and forth. And so that's something that I need to be aware of, and we can do some things together to make sure that it's more accommodating for you, whatever that may be. But I let them know, and sometimes I'll give it to them and say, this, we're going to grade you on this. Fair's fair, right? But I will say that there is some defensiveness, but most of the time they're defensive when they're not being accommodating. Right? So our great teachers who are accommodating. And again, if you establish things the way they should be, it should be that they're getting pretty much all A's, right? You could throw B's in there if you want. Be a little bit nicer, that's fine. But using, so helping them to gather all this information, determine their goals, talk about the effectiveness of their accommodations, services that they need, helping you to draft that IEP is great. Having students model to each other, teach each other. And then that student can take home that draft. You guys send a draft of the IEP home, they can take it home too. And it's like, okay, great, I want you to talk about that with your parent, and then you're gonna follow up with them when they come back to school. Here's an example of what one of my students did here. She drew some hearts on there as well. But these are some things, that she made sure that she wanted to talk about. And so when we went through that part of the IEP, she did the introductions. She talked about what she thought her strengths were. So she had something to contribute when we got to those portions of the IEP. And again, this is that step-by-step, parent concerns, ask the parent, right? The student can ask them, you can ask them, however that may work, but ask them what they feel like their concerns are as well. This entire resource is linked there too, so you guys have a copy of that. Okay, and so I love to have my students send out the meeting invite. Sometimes we make it on a cute little party invite, and we give it to the parent. Their kid's going to be the star of the show. What parent, again, doesn't come and watch their kid perform? So their kiddo is inviting you to their IEP. I will tell you, it truly, truly, truly does increase participation when you can do that. I also think that it's helpful with the student and kind of to set the stage so that they can feel freely to share information. And we're not going to disrupt the student while they're talking, right? Because we don't want our students to disrupt the adults when they're talking too. And so I think that's helpful to let people know. And then, the students can introduce people. We have the IEP meeting discussion. We talk about revisions that might be needed. And then I have my kiddos write thank you notes too. I can say thank you for participating in the IEP. It's a thankless job, y'all, right? So we write that, thank you for coming to my IEP meeting. And then, of course, we implement the IEP, we progress monitor. The kids are a part of all of that. We talk about all of these things. And then we also bring up, if it's not working, do we need to call? Look, I got it in there again, like another case conference, an IEP meeting. Do we need to call that and have a discussion? Or is this something that we can kind of do and kind of troubleshoot together? What the impacts are going forward, it's just that we have these meaningful consultations when we're working with the kids. We are teaching them to function in the adult world. Our students are more involved in their education. They're taking responsibility for their own learning and not like, they didn't give me my accommodations, so I don't have to do it, right? Or I'm not gonna put forth the effort. School staff is way more supportive. Here's your transition goal, done, and you've been doing it since the kiddo was little. Your IEP meetings will be shorter, unless the kid is a talker and goes on and on and on. But when you have a kid run your IEP meetings, they're gonna be shorter, and there's going to be less arguing back and forth among the adults who are arguing about things about the child. When the child can help to say, this is what I need, this is why I need it, this is difficult for me. Sometimes we just don't have as many of those back and forth interactions that are a little bit more negative. There's a better checks and balances. That kiddo is truly aware of the expectations. What are those accommodations? What are those services? And if they're not seeing the occupational therapist ever, but they sat in that IEP meeting and they know, I'm supposed to see this person once every 2 weeks, then they know to speak up about it. Otherwise, they don't always speak up because they don't know. And I really feel like this is just the catalyst for improving outcomes and improving accessibility for all of our students. The more they can educate all the staff. And then, of course, the true focus is on the student, not on systems at this time when they are involved. They know why the services are in place. They actually have access to their own IEPs and they can see their own IEPs. Why wouldn't the student be able to touch them and see them and scribble all over them and make suggestions? It's about them after all. They know their abilities. They know things that they need to work on. And then also helps to develop the communication, presentation skills. They can help to monitor and track their own performance. They really take ownership. I'm a techie, like I said, so that technology integration. And then they just have increased confidence. So if we do have somebody who is out on medical leave for an extended period of time, they feel confident enough to tell somebody, these are the things that I need. I am going to show you, so I have, in the remaining time that we have, I want to kind of talk about some ways in which you can implement this, and we're going to talk about some digital portfolios that you can make. And I wanted to kind of explain to you where it came from. So this is, I think I already have. Oh, maybe I don't. You should be able to get a copy of it. Just say make a copy. This is my life binder. And this was created quite some time ago. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. There you go. And you guys are welcome to take this, use it. Ironically, I have a lot of adults who like it as well, but feel free to use this. And it is totally self-serving, I'm going to be honest, because I would have seniors come up to me and be like, remember that one time I did that one thing? When were those dates? Because they're applying for different things. They're applying for financial aid, or they have a scholarship or whatever. And they would come to me because I'm the constant, right? I've been in this child's life for year after year after year. And they're like, when did I do that one thing? Because I need to put it on this college application. And I'm like, we're never doing this again. So I created this to give to everybody their freshman year to kind of help walk through all of these things that we need to gather, things that we need to consider to kind of help prepare them for life after high school. Now, you can print this off. That's typically what I did in the past. Of course, now with technology, you can utilize a lot of other things. But this is a really great place to keep everything all together. Now, word of caution, I do have in here some other things you might want to include. Birth certificates, social security cards. Obviously, we don't want to have this just willy-nilly in some spot. It needs to be in a secure spot, wherever that may be. That's a conversation for you guys to have. You might not want to include these things at all with your student, and that's completely fine. But these are just some things to think about adding to this binder as well. And I typically put them in sleeves, so that way we can put things, other documents and things like that in the page protector sleeves. So first, if you print this off, there will be like a front and back. There'll be a page that'll be blank, and that's for them to put these documents in. So most recent IEP is going to be there, and then the back side is blank if you print this front and back. Audiogram, what's their most current audiogram? And we stick it in there. That's really, really helpful, especially as they move on to college or the workforce or whatever, that they have that there. Their high school transcript, right? We print this off. We tend to talk about what credits they've earned so far and that kind of thing. We are going to stick that in there as well. And then of course, this is preparing them for when they go, or if they go to college, we're going to stick that there. Of course, if this doesn't apply, you can take this out for that student. Here are some common accommodations. I just add that as a page so that it's there and it's contained with all of these things. Here's where it's a little self-serving for me. I talked about clubs and organizations. When were you involved with this? So this is why it's helpful to kind of start this process or start thinking about this process when they're freshmen, because sometimes in order to be a part of whatever club or the National Honor Society or whatever, you've got to have documentation of all of these things. So I've got a couple pages of that. Work and school information, where did they attend school or where have they been working? That's all included in there as well. Their volunteer hours, because we like to do this at the very last minute too, right? And their senior year, they're scrambling. What were those volunteer hours that I did, or when was that? Here you can put it all in here. If they have a resume, I like to create a resume, and I also like to have the conversation with them about who would be good references to have, and we're going to put that in here. We're also going to list that here, so that way if they were to get a job, even even if it's just a part-time job and they were to need a reference, they would have that there, and they've already asked those questions. Voc Rehab, do they have a Voc Rehab counselor? If so, putting that information in here as well. Their family information. So their information, emergency contact, you have family members, you need to know their information as well. Put that all in here, and I've got several pages of that, and you can make more copies if you need it. Their medical information. These are things that we're going to talk about as they transition, right? Can they make an appointment with their doctor? What are some things that they need to consider when making that appointment with their doctor? What kind of accessibility things? But first and foremost, they need to know who that doctor is and how do we call and make an appointment. So all of that is in there as well. Medical history, that's very helpful. Things that you might need to document. But again, you don't have to fill out every single page of this. Insurance information, a lot of times parents keep those insurance cards, right? Kids don't have them, but it's helpful for them. And now a lot of times they're virtual or digital, and you'll have them available digitally as well. Anything else? Where do they go for their pharmacy? Things like that are in here. Financial information, information about their banks, other accounts that they may have. If they have stocks, bonds, mortgages, 401ks, like these things will come later, but these are great discussion points for your kids. Credit cards, what's their account number? Again, making sure that this isn't available for the public to see. What's their credit limit? Phone number if they need to call. Other legal things that are there as well. If they have any caregiver, of course, a lot of this stuff is going to come later. But as we talked about things with transition, that's how these things started to get adding on to this. So let's say they graduate from high school, they get an apartment. If they have an electrical problem, who do they call? Let's look up some things. How do we know who to call? Let's look up Yelp reviews, right, so that we know who to call. And let's put that in there. Do they have somebody who's going to kind of come and help them with things as well? Addresses, this is really, really important. I don't know, I still get questions, like especially with DocuSign, have you ever lived at this address? Pick between the 4 that you've lived. I'm like, oh man, I think that was like my freshman year, second semester. I lived at that address, you know? So this is really helpful to make sure that you have this documented. I'll tell you, I don't know that we have the Indiana Unclaimed or whatever, you know, where you have money sitting there. I have money sitting in a place, and I can't get it because I have 0 documentation right now with my name on that address that I've ever lived there. And I lived there for a semester while I was in college. And so I can't get that money because I don't have documentation of that. So anyways, I'm not saying to keep a bill, but hey, you might need it later on in life. I don't know. Passwords, of course, they have password apps. And of course, this is very protected information. I don't necessarily recommend putting it out there. But how many of y'all have millions of passwords that go with everything? And oh my goodness, right? So I created this life binder for my transitioning, so high school students. And then we started to kind of transition over and because I became way more digital. So this is kind of what we started. So now we're going to talk about, are you guys familiar with using Google Sites? Anybody use a Google site before? Oh, nice. We got 3 of you guys. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to take a look at this example. All right, so this is Transitioning Terry, and I created this with my student. Well, this is an example of what I have created, but this is an actual student example. So you can go to Google Sites. It is completely free. What I recommend is that you use an email address that the kiddo can access after they leave you, or they at least share it and share editing rights with another account too, so that way it doesn't completely get lost. So what we have in here is information about Terry. This is just a random stock photo. But here, hi, I'm Terry. I'm the captain of the cheerleading team at Brownsburg High School. Go Dogs. That's obviously not Brownsburg High School. But anyways, let's pretend. And this is just information about transition. This is actually really cool. We did a transition day in Indiana, and that's a really cool video about, hey, come along and come to this transition day. This is where you can put addresses. This is where I work at. You can embed maps, which is really cool. And then I have information here about the student-led in-services and information and IEPs in here as well. So you can add all of these different areas in here. One thing, so here's for example, what we will do is we'll put the audiogram in here. Here's a copy of the audiogram. Of course, this is not an audiogram, but we would put a copy of the audiogram. And here's a copy of the student's IEP, and that's in here as well. And we can add things like transcript. Here's a sample transcript that you can add to this Google site. These are things, again, that we're working on with our student, and we're going to update them as we go. Of course, this is a little bit more high-tech, so I wouldn't, I've got some elementary students who could do this, but I would say middle school, high school, we can start incorporating a lot of these things in here. You can add information about work and volunteer experiences. This is, I did from 2012 to 2016, I was a babysitter. Here's information. You can put your references in there. You can email this person. You can hyperlink all of this and send them on their way. You can also, what I love, I have added a couple of students who were doing more school-based work opportunities. We had videos of them doing their job. Okay, and so I have one student who he loved money, anything about money and coins. He just loved coins. And so we actually he was working at an arcade at the time, and his job was to take all of the coins out of the arcade machines. And so we had a video of him doing this, and then what he did with the coins, and then he took them, and then he counted them, and he rolled them all up and all of this. And so it was just really great so the purpose of this, then we use this, so when he was applying for jobs, they could see those previous work experiences that he had. So here's, again, a copy of a resume. Here's my resume. It's all available here. You can put points on a map and say, these are the places that I worked. Accommodations. So we can put information, you guys are probably all very familiar with this, right? You could put this, you can check it off, or you can just list them, or whatever works the best for you. And you can have that as a separate page. So what I love about Google Sites is that you can publish some of your pages and have them available to everybody. Or you don't have to publish them, but they can be kind of hidden. So I don't know how many of you guys have developed a website of your own. You can actually even use this for your own if you would like. I actually had a former teacher of the deaf who worked with us, and she would create a Google site and put all of this information. She would have a page for troubleshooting this or how to turn on closed captioning, and she would have videos embedded in there. She had all of the information. So if you had questions about anything or anything that related to the students, you could go to this site first and find that information and go from there. And then of course, if they couldn't find it or you couldn't troubleshoot it or whatever, then of course you can contact the teacher and get that information that way. So I would love to kind of walk through a little bit, or to talk through like what you could put in this site. And do you guys feel like this is something doable that you could do with your students as well? Yes? Yes? Maybe? Maybe. I have some students who do their in-services. They do their in-services by creating a site, and they click through, and then they share that site with their teachers. And so it goes through all of these, all of the different domains that we want to add. There are some hidden things. Again, you don't have to put out your resume. This is available, kind of like it's out on the World Wide Web, so we don't want to put all of that information. But there's a lot of, like I said, you can hide it, and then if somebody wants to present that, or they can share their link with a specific person, you can do that. And the nice thing is that, you know, it works like Google. So if you only share it with an email address, then it's only that email address that can access it. or you can make it available for everybody. Things that you need to kind of talk about when you're working with your students. So I would love to go through some of that, but before I do, I want to kind of just touch on some of the resources here, and then we'll kind of go back and we'll talk about, I just want to make sure that we have enough time to do all the things. Or actually, we can answer any questions that you guys may have too. I have a lot of resources for expanded core curriculum. If you guys want some of those are available here. Tons of resources. I'm kind of the queen of resources, and I'm going to show you one of my biggest resources available, and then we'll go back to creating our transition portfolio. Here's information about student-led. A lot of the research that I talked about, that you're going to find a lot of that in here and how it's helpful, but then also guides and this one I actually love too. It's like just the teen-driven IEP template. I love all of these resources. Self-advocacy resources, I've got a ton of those. I just kind of added a couple here. This live binder is really great if you guys have an opportunity to go to that. And here's just some general resources as well. And that's my contact information if you guys need to get a hold of me. One other resource that I want to quickly show you guys is, so again, this was self-serving as well. I have I don't know if has anybody seen my Deaf Education Resources Live Binder? I see a couple of nods. Apparently, like, I have more than 1 million unique clicks on this thing, so it's out there. I have found it in other people's presentations before referencing, so anyway, what I have found here recently is that there are I have some broken links. It seems like everybody's websites are getting facelifts, so if you find them, let me know. If you can help me find the alternative, let me know that, like, where it's at now. You can send that to me, that's great. I actually used live binders because you can upload to it, but you can also link to it. So it's kind of like Pinterest where you can link to things, but then you can also upload documents as well. So basically, anything under the sun, I've got resources for. This is primarily deaf education. However, I do have some blind, low vision. I have some deaf blind resources in here as well. But some of this is just general information too. I do want to kind of talk about how it's organized, and you can create one of these as well. Your students can create one of these. Things that are yellow, like if you see things that are highlighted yellow, you'll see this here. Those are a lot of times kind of my go-tos, or those are things that I reference more frequently. Things that are red actually come out from our center, so they're resources that come out of the Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education. If they're highlighted blue, that is either an Indiana document, it is legal, or it's Indiana specific. I don't have all of like the Indiana organizations highlighted blue, but this is more like you'll see our Indiana Department of Education, their accessibility and accommodations guidance is here. So for those of you guys who are in Illinois, you might want to perhaps ignore some of those, although I do make federal law and things that are more federal, those are going to be highlighted blue too. So I cover all of these different areas. If you need resources for ASL, there's a whole bunch of them there. If you need information so there's audiology, here's a whole bunch of stuff there. Secondary transition, if you guys need transition assessments to do with your students, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. So whatever, if you need a resource for something, you can just type it up into the search bar up here, and I probably have a resource for it. But again, this was self-serving because people would email me and they're like, hey, do you have a resource for this? And I'm like, yes, here you go. Somebody else would email me basically the same question. Yes, here you go. Hey, do you have a resource for this? Oh, yes, here you go. So I created this so that way you can kind of go here first, look through here. If you don't know specifically what you're looking for, you can kind of go by the category. You can look through that. And then if you don't find something, then you can ask me. Or if you guys have something that you use, a resource that you use all the time, you can please feel free to share that with me as well. So one thing that, if you'll notice in the in-service tab right here, these are things that I love to use while I'm in-servicing teachers. These are things that can be incorporated into that transition portfolio or as you're creating videos and things like that for students. Of course, Flintstones is right here. That one's probably the most popular and most common one, but there's a whole bunch of them there. And then I have information specifically about IEP. So if you go to self-advocacy and self-determination, there's some in there, but then there's also some in secondary transition as well. So all of these resources, most of the resources that I talked about today, they're all gonna be in here for you guys so you can find all of that stuff. And then I link to a lot of that as well. Oh, and I do want to, because we're talking about advocacy, there's a couple of really great screeners on TPT, or Teachers Pay Teachers. Do you guys know about those self-advocacy screeners? I love that. So a lot of times, like, we'll go through that if I have a new student, and I think I linked that as well. Any questions just in general, and then we can kind of talk about the Google Sites and how that operates. In general, self-advocacy, comments, things like that. You guys are like, I'm coasting. Yeah. Okay, all right, cool. All right. Back it up here. So I did have a couple of you guys. So in order to get to Google Sites, it's not the most readily available. You can, of course, Google Sites, right? And that'll get you there, and it'll have you log on with your Google account. You can also go to ads. So if you are in your Google Drive, you can go in there. It's not always the thing that you'll see at the top. It'll actually, you can kind of filter down with all the different applications that are in there, and you'll be able to find it there. And I have one that has kind of started, but we can walk through the process of what it might look like too. So this is what they give you. Again, you can use this for lots and lots and lots of different things. You can use it for your own, whatever you're doing. You can create a template. I know of several teachers who have created a template, and then they make copies of kind of the bare bones, and then kids will start to add their information in there. One thing to note, I would say whatever you are putting in here, to make sure that you have everything saved in one Google Drive folder. And in that folder, you have all of your sharing rights, because otherwise when people go to the website, like that, you have it set that anybody can view it. And so then they'll be able to view all the things that you put in here. If they don't set that up ahead of time, that can be a little problematic, because then people can't access the things that you put on your site. So, all right, you guys are more than welcome to do this along with. Feel free, I see computers up, so this is good. Are you guys there? Are you on Google Sites? No, not yet. I love seeing what people can come up with when they're starting to play around. And so this is just kind of the take and make portion. So we can walk through it, we can talk about it, we can add things to it. But I love to see what you guys are able to come up with as far as how would you create your transition portfolio for students. So, do we want to create one together? Do you guys want to create your own individually? It's completely up to you, but I will also allow. So as a teacher, I know that if you don't give time to do things, sometimes you don't ever get them done. So that's why it's like, okay, so this is the last little bit, get you guys talking and get you guys kind of rolling in all of this, taking some of this information and putting it in here to help your students. Of course, you can show your students as well and then just have them create their own, or you can help create the bare bones for them. But let's talk about, so we can make this for one student or your entire class. What would we call it? Do we want to call it whoever's in service? Like, I'm open for whatever, and we'll walk through it and we'll talk through it as we go. Or would you guys prefer to sit and create on your own?
So is this like maybe creating like a
Yeah.
template?
Sure.
Transition?
Yes. Whatever you want it to be. So that's what I use, but if you want to make it an in-service template, you can do that too. Whatever you guys would like to make. Yeah.
I was just thinking you can do like their own advocacy site. So what are some advocacy activities they've completed?
Awesome.
Or what goals they've met in terms of that?
Yes, I love that. So you could make it an advocacy site, and you could put like kind of goals for them to learn about, goals for them to work on. I know I have another teacher who has taken this, and she's made all of her lessons for students using Google Sites too. So she has separate ones about advocacy. You have separate ones for different topics and those sorts of things. So but I want to make this the most functional for you. Again, you don't have to use this. We can kind of go back and use the in-service template or whatever, but I do know that allowing teachers to have time to create things, ask questions, see what you would put in different areas. If I didn't have that, like I'm doing it at midnight on my couch. So I want to give that opportunity to you guys too. If you feel like this would be helpful to create a template, then that's the goal. So ideas, what would you put in yours? Do you have an idea? Oh, you're like, okay, I'm done. It's done. Are the juices flowing? Have some ideas?
I like that you can add a QR code to the page.
Yes. You can Rickroll people if you want. Put that QR code in there. Rickroll. What is Rickroll? Well, for those of you guys who didn't go to this, we'll send you to it. This is up here at the beginning of the presentation. If you guys go to this QR code, go ahead, zap it with your phone. That one. You could create your own experiential in-service doing this as well. So if you noted the one where we have everything muted, only half of the captions are there, that is a wonderful place to be able to do that too. So yeah, sorry, Rickroll. But it's relevant, right? Because everybody else knew where they were supposed to be, and you were the one who came in and you didn't understand, and so that's where you went. All right. So it is super easy to navigate. It functions very much like slides, I would say. Also, and then you can embed forms. You can embed a whole bunch of stuff to it. So if we're going to say, again, this is, do we want to create one that is like our own, or would you guys prefer just a general one? And I can share it with you too, whatever we create. A general one? General one. So do we want to make more of an in-service type thing, or do we want to make it specific for like transition? In-service. All right. All right, so we're going to create that as an in-service. And as you go, of course, it's just like Drive, so it's saving everything. We can change our themes over here. There's not a whole lot of it's the basics, but does this look better? Maybe? How about that one? Maybe? And then, of course, we can change the color too for different things. So you can change this image in the back. So whatever you want to change it to, we can change that image. This is just kind of a pre-populated one, but you can search through whatever. You can put images of your students. I love getting all of my students together, taking a picture of them and using that, and also emailing it to teachers as we go. But I'm not going to change the picture just yet, but you're more than welcome to do that. Do you guys want to all be working on the same one together? What did you say, no? No, you don't? Yeah, you do? Yes? No? Are you like, no, that would mess with my feng shui a little bit if somebody is moving things around where I don't want it to be? Okay, I respect that. I respect that. So this is where you go and you add a page. And so you can add a link to another page. You can add like a whole new page. So we're going to add another page, and we're going to call this what? What topic? What topic are we going to add into our in-service? What did you say, apps? Oh, we can put apps. How-tos, tutorials. How about that? Let's do tutorial. Sound good? All right. Tutorials. So these are like going to be like our how-to tutorials. How's that? What are some things that we can add to the how-to? What are some things that we might want to put in here? Anybody? Huh? FM system. Beautiful. Yes. So we can add a picture of one, right? We can add, I actually have, you most definitely can do that. Hey, and I don't know if you guys know this. Okay, so what FM system? Phonak? Okay, Edumike, we have our biases, right? Okay, so Phonak, Roger. Let's get a picture of it, and we can add a picture to it. Here's where, well, that's the one on eBay, but that's okay. We can still use that picture. We're going to save that picture. This is what it looks like. I don't want to save the link. I want to save the picture. We're going to buy it on eBay. Don't do that, guys. Don't do that. Don't buy it on eBay. But we're just, for time's sake, we're just going to copy. Oh, that's a terrible picture. I have more pictures of this available. I'm not using that picture. That's terrible. Here we go. All right. Again, I would suggest if you want to save everything in one folder, that really helps to be able to grab things out and put it in here a little bit quicker. We're getting rid of this one. All right, so we are going to add an image and upload it. Add that there. Here it is. And there it is. Now we can add our tutorials. I actually have a really, I can actually probably link it to the drive and so that you guys would have it as well. And it's a picture image of how to use this system. Let me see. I would have to get that to, I might have to unplug to get me there though. And then I'll get it for you and I'll add it on there. Sorry. I will actually share this with you as well, and you'll have this available. Oh, here we go. This one's actually better. Let's do this. All right. And we are also going to embed this one. Okay. All right. Sorry, I had to get to some stuff. Okay, so so I have like a playlist of Roger stuff available. So here is one of those. And so all we have to do is say embed over here. and we're going to add it in here. And we're going to say, okay, here it is. Here are, here's a huge playlist on how to access all of this. And then I also have this right here. Actually, I just copied that. This is our guide. Here, let me make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. And I can show it to you in slideshow mode too, so you can see it. So here's, actually, you guys can have access to this. This is a Roger touchscreen tutorial. And we actually send this along with a lot of our students too, and then just say, please contact, and then who to contact for additional help if needed. So this is a great place and a quick user guide. So we can add this on there, because that's one of our tutorials. And you can rearrange all of this stuff. You can put it as an image. You can put it as like an actual document and stick it in there. And of course, down here, you can make it so that it's a little bit more visually appealing as well. I'm just going to add another one in here just because. And there's our tutorial. And we're going to insert that on there too. Great, so we've got tutorials. Do you guys see? So you can add a text box, you can add more information to that. You can add an image. So if we wanted to take the image of the kiddo who's going, by the way, that's my son, who's like, yes, this is where we wear our microphone, and no, this is not where we wear our microphone. You can put that in there as well. Anything that you have saved in Drive, you can have a PowerPoint presentation, you can have a PDF, you could have their IEPs saved in there. That can all be in there. If you wanted to embed the IEP of accommodation, or the accommodations from Hands and Voices, I know you guys have all seen that. You can add that in there as well. And then we can keep adding pages too. So what other tutorial or what other page might you add? That would be helpful to share with gen ed teachers or for transition purposes. Accommodations, yes, I love it. So we're going to add here, we're going to add a new page called accommodations. And you can actually make it so that way you can do a drop down. And in fact, because we talked about some of these accommodations already in our Jamboard, we could even add that on there if we wanted to. And all of this stuff can be modified. This is like so user friendly. It's so easy to change all of this. So, and what's great is that it's completely free. And then all you have to do is hit this publish button, and away you go. See the publish button? If I were to hit that, you could, I mean, it would publish, it would be available. Whatever we have out here, it would be available. You can also go in and you can note which things you want to have hidden, which ones you want to have available even when you publish. One cool thing, I don't know if you guys, actually, let's go back to our how-to tutorial. Because I had shared this Roger touchscreen tutorial, and that's right here. For those of you guys who don't have this yet, if you are using anything Google, you can, the QR code extension on Google is amazing. So whatever website you are at, you click this button, and there it is. The QR code extension it's a Google Chrome extension. Get it. Like it is, like then you don't have to go and like Google and try to find a place to go and get whatever. So if you guys can see it up here at the top, I've got tons of extension. You guys want confetti? We can do that too. Yay, we're almost done. But this is a great extension. Of course, Bitly is a great one too. But if you go to any page, anywhere, ever, you can get the QR code. So if you were going to grab, because I think I did these tutorials here, and if we were to open this up into another site, this link right here is a pretty long link, right? And maybe we don't want to share that. We want to put this in there. And then all you have to do is take your snipping tool, grab that, and now you have that link available. That QR code, yeah.
You said that there's a Google Chrome extension.
Yes.
I'm in extension.
Search for QR code generator.
Oh, generator?
Well, I think that's probably what it's called, yeah. Yep. So now this will take you to whatever page you're on. So you can shorten it with, if you guys use Bitly, or you can do it this way too. And it's super great. What I love is that I will create something in Drive. Like let's say you use a Google Doc in Drive, and then you can take the QR code there and you can continually change some of that and update that stuff that is in the Drive or in the Drive folder, because then you have that QR code that always takes you back to this folder. And so you add more documents in the folder, you modify some things, but it's always, you're always sharing that same QR code for a kid. Do you see it? Let me see what it looks like. Are you still trying to find the QR code generator?
I'm wondering if Chicago Public School has like blocked it.
Oh, that could be. There you go. Oh, your admin blocked it. No fair. Tell them you need this and add it to Chrome. And then once you have it available on Chrome, then you can QR code everything. You don't have to use that. You can, okay, so if you have a computer and it won't take you there and you can't add those extensions, you can get to it on a personal device. It's just, you got to email the graphic to yourself. So, then we can add this. Oh, I was on the space here. We had this QR code, right, that we were taking a snip of. I don't know if that was it or not. And we're going to save that. This was the Roger tutorial. All right, and then we'll take it over here. And in this page, we're going to go ahead and insert an image, and we're going to upload it. You could also choose to select it from Google Drive if you want. And I think I put that in my downloads. And it's there, and I can put it right here. So if you're going to use a picture, or you can use a QR code to take people places, or you can use a shortened link, or the actual link if they're going to have this digitally, then they can click on it. Accommodations, so we were talking about accommodations, what accommodations to put in here. We can just list the accommodations for our students if you want. You can also take a YouTube video of your kiddo and put them in here, or even if you have a video and you save it in Google Drive, you can take that and you can put that in here for your kiddo as well. So maybe I wanted to take the kiddo, my student who loved Dr. Octopus. And I think it was so real when we were recording that. He was just talking about the things that he loved. And so again, the IEP doesn't define our students, so I wanted to make sure that he talked about all the things. And not only that, but with that kid, you could get him to do just about anything if you were talking about superheroes. so that was super great to add there too. So accommodations, we could have videos talking about why we need this accommodation. We could have a list. We can include a text box here and a list. What are some of the accommodations? We mentioned some of these accommodations over here in our Jamboard. Let's add your accommodations in here. There they are. All right. So we are going to talk about, test accommodations. So testing accommodations, accommodations after high school, what those might be. Do we have some examples of what they could be? And we could add them in here. So let's see. We need, closed captioning, because I'm huge on that. And I actually have a link for that too. If you guys, here's my how to CC just about everything. And here's how to do it. So you can keep adding on down that list. You can create bullets. You could use videos. Anything you guys want to see me display, you just let me know if there's something you want me to add in here. Oh, I do love the image carousel. That's really kind of cool too. I love to include the pictures of my students when we take pictures during our consultations, and then we just keep this, the images that are scrolling through, and we have their, those accommodations in there as well. If we were to publish this, you can access it then on a phone or on your device. And you can actually update the web address so that it makes sense. I don't really recommend using your students' like full name. Of course, that's up to them, but you can use, you know, something that they would know and that they can access it later. We can talk about who manages the site. So of course, if you create this on yours, but we want them to have it after we leave, we want to make sure that they have access to this going forward. So we would give access to whatever account that we would need to give access to. I always think too, so I tend to click this button because I don't necessarily want it to be publicly searchable unless your student really wants that to happen. But that tends to be how I publish things when I go forward. And I think we kind of talked about all of the unique changes that you can do on here. So anything else you guys want to see? Oh, sheets, forms. I also, I think I had that in one of my examples. The forms, you can put your teacher report card in here. You can put a daily listening check form in here so that this student is always tied to this, this website. So play around with it. I would love, when you guys create something, I've seen some really cool websites that are being made. So I would love if you guys want to share them back with me, because I think that's fun to see how teachers come up with things for their students. But anyway, yeah.
Another cool thing on a lot of the Google sites is if you right click, you can translate to.
Yes.
Translate it into Spanish.
That is
or
true.
Other languages if you had families who used languages other than
That is true. I also don't know if you use Google Keep, but one of the really cool features that I love about Google Keep is that, here, I will show you. I think I got rid of one of my, yeah, I did. But you can, if you take a picture of something and it has words on it, so let's say that your kiddos are putting something, you have all of your homework assignments and things like that, or all your notes on the board. You can take a picture of that and you can grab it and you throw it into Google Keep, and then you can tell Google Keep to extract the words and it'll put it into print. So you can actually, so then whatever was an image, you can now have it in print, and now you can use it for like a screen read or something like that too, which is really kind of nice. So I don't know if I have, let me see what I have in here that I could take a picture of and I could show you. Oh, this'll do. This'll do. Yeah. So I'm taking a picture of my board. Of course, it's not a board, but I am taking a picture of my board. And then I'm going to throw it into Note in my Google Keep. Actually, let me do it. Yeah. Actually, it came in upside down, but that's okay. All right. So now, should be in here somewhere. It's not popping up real time, naturally. But if it was, I could show you how it would all work. I cannot. I think it's taking a minute to load or to share. There it goes. I see him updating. Okay. Yay. Where's it at? Where's it at? Oh, here's it. I got it. Here's another one. All right. Okay. So we take this here. So this is, let's say that this is our example, right? And we come in here and we grab the image text. And then there it is. So whatever you grab out of there, it actually creates it and puts the text in here. So that kind of helps with homework assignments and things like that. But yeah, and it's great because you can do, so you can take that, you can grab that text, and you can translate it into another language too. So wherever you're going about, you can, take pictures of things and you can translate. And of course, I would check with other people to ensure accuracy, of whatever's been translated. But that's a really great way to be able to take this and then be able to translate it for other people as well. So, all right, anything else? Anything else you want to see? Do you guys feel like this is feasible, doable? Thoughts and takeaways for your kiddos kind of managing their in-service process and their IEP process. Anybody do that? Do you include your kiddos from a really young age in the IEP process?
No, and
No.
it's hard because I feel like with my students, they don't know what an IEP is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that they're going to be having hearing loss when they're adults.
Okay.
And I don't want to like say, well, you have a disability, so you have you need
Sure.
to carefully orchestrate how you're
Yes, I agree.
say that with a kid.
Yeah.
And so I am sometimes the first one that's like, you have an IEP, it just says like what you need, and we'll talk about you, how you're doing, how great you're doing every year, but like, yeah, they're
Yeah. Okay, so the comment was, so a lot of students don't know that they have an IEP. They don't know that they're going to continue to be deaf or hard of hearing as they get older. So sometimes you have to be cautious about using that language with the students. And I agree. I don't necessarily especially with my littles, I usually tell them we're going to have a meeting, right? So all the people who work with you, we have a meeting. We develop this document that's right here. It's called an IEP, but we don't need to talk about that. We don't need to dwell on what it's called, but it's a plan for your services. It's a plan for things that will help you. It's a plan for the things that we need to put into place to make sure that that you're successful. Yeah.
We have parents who don't want their children to know.
You have parents that don't want their students to know. Again, going back to this is an adult issue, right?
But they will tell us no, do not do it.
That they don't want them. Okay, you can't override. So parents say no, they don't want their kiddo involved. Okay, that's fine. I have had students who have not been involved, but we also create something for me to show at their IEP meetings. So I will create, so going back to kind of that matrix that says who's there, what helps, what is hard for me, what's easy, they can still do that. And even if they're not there in the meeting, they're still a part of that because they still need to be able to generalize and say, this is what helps me, this is what I need, and that sort of thing. I know that we have to talk about some sensitive information sometimes at those IEP meetings, so it might not be appropriate for them all to be there, but I think it definitely is appropriate for them to know that we are having a meeting and we want to take their thoughts into consideration as we're making plans for them. So again, if the parents are like, nope, the kiddo can't be here, I completely understand that. I also know that sometimes these IEP meetings will drag on and on and on, and is it appropriate for your kid to be there the entire time or not? We have to weigh that. Do you have a comment too?
Yeah, I had a question about, some of those kids we're trying to include that and ask them, what's
Right.
How do you get to know?
Okay. Yeah, okay, so the question was, sometimes kids say, I don't have a problem. Everything is coming up roses, right? I don't need any of these things. So that's where I feel like some of those functional assessments will lend themselves to some of those conversations and say, you didn't do so well. Although you might have kids that do amazingly well, right? And if that's the case, say, you know what, you really thrive in this. Usually you can add in like background noise, visual, things going on at the same time that they will start to be like, okay, this is a little tricky. But just say, you know what? Yeah, you might not have a whole lot of needs now, but I want you to be aware of all the people who are involved in case there is a need that comes up too. And, one of the things that I always say is that, you know what? You are a good student. You do well academically. You're on par with all of your peers, right? But sometime, are you going to go to college? Yes, you're going to go to college. So that same scenario that I gave about, okay, what happens when you are trekking across campus to get to that class? You're in a lecture hall of 300 people. You have a non-native English speaking professor with a mustache, right? And you are situated at the very back of the room because you have to go so far. What are you going to do? Right? Let's just have, okay, then maybe they're like, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, do you know your audiologist number? Can you make your own appointments? Do you know, I will tell you, hey, the same girl, my Dr. Pimple Popper, the one who sued, I'm not going to say the college, almost did. You could probably look her up. Anyway, but one of the things that I thought was very interesting, her senior year, so our honors students don't know a lot of the functional skills that they need to know, right? We were talking about bank accounts and da-da-da-da-da and all this other stuff, and I happened to say the word ATM. She did not know what an ATM even was. It was something that, mom and dad just kind of take care of, and she didn't ever know what it was. And I was like, okay, you've probably been in the car when mom and dad went to this thing. They put in their card and it gives them money. She had no idea, though, that that was actually attached to their bank account. And she was a straight A academic honors student. And it was not something, and again, if it's not within her bubble, she's not picking up on it, or she's not really attending to it because it's a little too, then parents would just do whatever they have to do. One thing we were talking about actually at lunch is like narrating your environment and how important it is for parents to narrate their environment all the time, describe what you're doing, use synonyms, be in that same bubble because our kiddos are already at a disadvantage. But so blind, low vision, narrate, we're going down the hall, we're turning right, oh, we're going by this person's room and that kind of thing. If we are, I already turned this off twice. It's coming back on. Sorry. But also, so for our kiddos who are deaf and hard of hearing, giving them access to all of those words and all of those, that incidental learning that they don't always have access to. So parents might they think they're crazy. I tell parents all the time, you need to become a human thesaurus. So instead of saying get in the car, we get in the automobile, we get in the SUV, get in the sport utility vehicle. Okay, we're going to unplug her. And anyways, so like using all of those terms so that they have access to that because otherwise they don't. Not to simplify our language any more than we actually absolutely need to. Here's my contact information if you guys need it. If you want to email me, you're more than welcome to. I'm on Marco Polo too. I have a lot of teachers who are like, what's this? And they show me a Marco Polo. So if you want that on Marco Polo, I'm happy to share that with you. I hope that you're able to take something away. I hope that you're able to kind of work on some of these transition activities, in-services, having your kiddos, empowering your kiddos, and creating a culture. Again, if you don't get anything else out of today, please celebrate uniqueness for all children that come across your way. So thank you guys all. Feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you. Thank you.